City of Grand Haven City Council Special Work Session of February 7th, 2022 is hereby called to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Cummins?
Here.
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Here.
Councilmember Fritz?
Here.
Councilmember Lowe?
Here.
Mayor McNally?
Here.
You have a quorum, Your Honor.
Thank you. Not sure we got any audience, but I'm going to make a first call to the audience here. This is one of, actually, I think for the work session, it's the single opportunity. I'll say, at this time, members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. And those not physically present who would like to call in may dial 616-935-3285. If the phone continues ringing, please remain on the line until your turn. We will take all callers. Do we have anyone here to address council? And Pat, nothing on the line?
Nobody calling right now.
All right, we'll move on. This meeting was called for a marijuana legal update by Tom Forshee, an attorney with Dickinson Wright, and I understand he was to be available on Zoom for us, Pat, is that correct?
Yep, we're bringing it up right now, Your Honor.
Perfect.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Councilmember Cummins is recognized.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would move that we discontinue the marijuana legal discussion to direct the city attorney to prepare a written opinion on the evolving legal landscape, proposed text amendments and recommendations of the Planning Commission, and risks of permitting or not permitting recreational marijuana sales, and to reconvene as a council to consider the written opinion in closed session if council feels then that it is warranted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Cummins, second by Lowe. Clerk, did you get sufficient language, or do you need it? Ryan, do you have it written for him?
I did provide it. I talked with
Okay,
him earlier today.
that's fine.
Yep.
Any discussion?
Good.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Yes.
Councilmember Fritz?
No.
Councilmember Lowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Cummins?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
No.
With 3 votes in the affirmative, the motion carries, Your Honor.
At this time, then, I think we've still got a briefing by City Attorney's firm and Tom Forshee, and he's going to address us on Open Meetings Act and, wasn't FOIA, Pat, what was it?
Yeah, FOIA, Freedom
FOIA?
of Information.
Okay. Yep.
And Kelly Beatty was going to do a presentation on that tonight, but we thought if the attorney was going to be here anyways, we might as well take advantage of his attendance. He's got some history advising municipalities on FOIA and Open Meetings Act, which are Michigan's 2 sunshine laws. So I thought I'd turn it over to Kelly and let him give you a brief summary, and then we can ask Tom if he wanted to make some comments as well, if you guys had questions, and just have a nice discussion about this. Typically, it's a big topic at municipal league conferences. Whenever we go, we get a reminder of here's the laws as they relate to FOIA, and that's probably a quarter-time job around here answering all of the FOIA requests. So Kelly's got some updates of his own that he's going to want City Council to consider, that there's been some changes and some adjustments in the landscape, so he's going to want to present that. And then Tom can explain a little more about the whole topic. So go ahead, Kelly.
All right, so I actually have a presentation as well. About half of it made it into your council packet before the end of last week. Pat asked me to expand on this. It was going to be about FOIA initially, but also to include the Open Meetings Act. So I've never got to do this before, but Kelly Beatty, City Clerk.
Welcome, Mr. Beatty.
Thank you. There's a few sunshine laws that are really at the top of everyone's mind in municipal government. These are really laws that were passed in the state legislature decades ago in response to the Watergate scandals. So I'm not here to tell you a whole history of these, but just provide kind of a general overview. And then, as Pat said, our attorney firm is here to answer direct questions, has a lot more experience with this than I do, so this is a big 10,000 feet overview of this. So what we're going to talk about today is the Michigan Freedom of Information Act and the Michigan Open Meetings Act. There's a third bubble on this infographic, which is records retention, because without that, these other two aren't as powerful. So some of the most important things to consider when you're starting with the Michigan Freedom of Information Act is, what is a public record? What is a document that someone can request? And there's this huge list in that big paragraph on the bottom, but I think the most important thing to remember is a public record is anything that's recorded, so something that you have either handwritten, typed up, but it can also be other things. So it can be things like a photograph, it can be a fax, it can be any kind of record that you have that you're using as part of your official duties. So it's not necessarily everything you have. Just because you use city letterhead to write down a note that you're going to your cousin's birthday party this weekend doesn't make it a public record. You know, it's probably not something you should do, but it's not a public record because it's not related to your official duties here. By the same token, if you went out, you bought a legal pad on your own dime, you didn't ask for any reimbursement from the city, and you wrote a letter to the city manager on it and sent it in, well, that is a public record. So it's not necessarily where the funding's coming from, but what the document is and what it's being used for.
Okay, Kelly, I got one for you.
Okay.
Private notes that you're making while you prepare for some public function, or, I mean, what are we required to retain?
So the record retention part is an entirely separate part of this, and I can address that a little bit later.
Okay.
But if you have the record and it's part of what you're using in your official capacity and someone requests that record, you'd generally be asked to turn it over.
If it's in your possession.
Right.
Okay.
So record retention is an entirely separate part of this. Part of responding to Freedom of Information Act requests is determining if you had it. You know, whether it was intentional or unintentional, if a record's gone before the length of time that you're required to hold on to it, and you don't have it, it's a very simple denial under the Freedom of Information Act. And record retention is a totally separate issue from that. It's just the record doesn't exist, we don't have it, so we can't give it to you.
Okay, good enough.
May I just give you an example? When I read the statement on hiring HDR a couple of meetings ago, that was immediately foiled by the BOP. And I had to follow all, I had it written, so Kelly asked me if he could get a copy of it, and we met the laws as required.
Yeah.
So just give an example.
Yep, thanks.
That is a good thing to keep in mind, is just, you know, if it's something that you actually have, that's what the Freedom of Information Act is. It doesn't cover things that don't exist, you know.
And Kelly, our Freedom of Information Act obligations come from a state statute
That is correct.
and also flow through the ordinance that we are reviewing and approving the change for today.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we thought this would be a good time to present on this, is we are required by that same statute to actually have this policy as well as the written public summary. So it's both those documents. The written public summary is designed to be more easily read by members of the public, whereas the policy is kind of the nitty-gritty details of it. And we're actually required to, you know, have both of those publicly available, so they're posted on our website. The old one, and, you know, once we get a chance to go through, if you do approve these amendments, certainly looking through that again and then posting it on our website as well. So everyone has an idea of what the official stance of the city is on those documents. So this is a very old list. If you look at it, it includes things like, you know, magnetic or punch cards for computers, but really the important thing to remember is this isn't an exhaustive list, it's just the documents that you have related to your job. So by the same token, we covered this already, but just what is not a public record is also important to know. So again, if it's information that's not related to your job, we don't want it. If someone FOIA requests all your emails, go through and we won't release the ones that are private business, that are, you're meeting your sister or whoever for dinner. That's not something that's important. It's something that's your private life, so. There are a number of requirements, though, and these were updated in 2018. This update really came on the heels of a FOIA request that made a lot of cities and a lot of election administrators nervous. There was a anonymous request through a company for election records from the 2016 election. So about a month before these records were scheduled for destruction, the company that was requesting them used a name that wasn't the company's name that they are a registered corporation as. They sent letters sometimes from Chicago, asked for responses to be mailed to a P.O. box in New York, and simply signed the letter Emily. They provided a Google Voice number and a Gmail that was freshly registered for this request. And that really had the legislature pay attention that, yeah, it's certainly something that's in the best interest to know who these records are going to, because part of the Freedom of Information Act exempts people that are under confinement, like if they're in jail, if they're in prison, from being able to make these requests. So if you look at this list up here, you're really looking for the mailing address for someone, you're looking for their name, you're looking for a way to contact them. For the most part, requests under the Michigan Freedom of Information Act do need to be in writing, but there's an asterisk here, which is an important part of this law, because everyone goes, the only thing the Freedom of Information Act covers are written requests. But you can make a verbal request if you are someone that's requesting accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act, so that's an important thing to cover in this as well. But also, under the same statute, under Michigan FOIA, if you are asked for, and this is every single person in this room, behind this desk, behind that desk over there, and any other employees or officers of the city, for something that you know is on the city website. So if you don't know it's on there, you can forget this part. You're required to let that person know that it's on the city website. So just an important thing to keep in mind, that not all FOIA requests are the traditional written requests that go through the city clerk's office. If someone verbally asks you, hey, do you know anything about the Chinook Pier redevelopment? You can say, yeah, it's right on the homepage of the website, and you're actually required to do that if you know it's there. So that's just a little lesser known part of this law, a really cool part of it though. You're certainly not required to have encyclopedic knowledge of the website though.
Good thing.
Right?
Kelly,
Yeah.
so this applies to, of course, everybody here.
Yeah.
But it also applies to our boards and commissions, correct?
Yeah.
And it would apply to the BLP, for example, as one of those departmental board, it's an elected board, but still a board in terms of having to maintain all of this. They're not exempt from any of this.
Correct.
Thank you.
And especially that part if it's a request that's a verbal request for something that's on the website, that's just good customer service here too. So anyone in the city that picks up a phone here, especially, that's how many of these verbal requests come in. People are going to be helpful about this. You don't need to dangle a law in front of them. You have good people working here. So some things that you can really watch out for to make sure that this is an actual request for a copy or a request to view a document that exists, not just kind of a general question. I put kind of some tips up here. So, if you see the word FOIA, copy, inspect, freedom of information, anything like that in an email or in anything else you've gotten in writing, that probably lets you know that that's likely going to be a Freedom of Information Act request. They don't, if you get a 900-page document and somewhere buried in the middle of it, someone's asking for a copy of something, generally you don't have to sweat it too much. When you do find that though, let us know. It's just like finding something in a spam folder, a junk folder, something like that. But really pay attention to the first few hundred words of any kind of written document you've gotten to see if anyone's asking for a copy of a record that we may have at the city. You know, they might also reference the Public Act number, the MCL number in it, so those are all in here as well. But a lot of times people know what they're asking for. They'll put these in the subject line, they'll put them right at the top or right at the beginning of their emails that they send you. So it's something really easy to find. Where you do get into trouble though is again when people don't mention that, sometimes it doesn't click for you, sometimes you have to reread it, and just know if someone's really asking for a copy of something, that's when it falls under this statute. Or if they're asking to come in and look at the original version. So there are a number of exemptions under the Freedom of Information Act, and these are all listed out in the law. But there are also things that are just statutory exemptions, and that is one of the exemptions listed in the law. So I put an example of one that we deal with in the clerk's office pretty regularly, and that's information in someone's voter registration. So this is actually spelled out in Michigan election law what you have to withhold, what you cannot release. So there's a whole section in some laws that specifically exempt some information from the Freedom of Information Act. And those are state laws that are telling you you don't have to include this information. And this is one I thought would be great to share because I also get to have the honor of letting you all know that we do have a May election this year. So that is coming up. Now there have been a number of changes to this over the years. 2018 was the first big change since our currently approved and enacted policy that we have. And this was the one that I was talking about just a little bit ago that talks about those additional requirements from someone that's making a request. But it also did cities a favor. And instead of being required to hold on to a request for a year if you've sent out a deposit notice, if you've asked people to pay because this is going to take us 60, 70, 80 hours of staff time to look at it, we're only really required to hold on to those for about a month and a half. And then we can consider it abandoned. So as an aside, at the city of Ann Arbor, when we got this request for election material, it took us about 6 weeks to respond to that. We sent the requester a bill for around $7,000 that they paid. So some of these requests can be very intrusive.
And did they figure out who it was?
Yeah, eventually it was linked back to a group. So there are news articles about that if you're ever interested. Just Google Emily FOIA and you'll find them in the state of Michigan. But it also added exemptions related to cybersecurity. So again, just truly trying to modernize this law. There's a additional, can you go up one slide for me? Changes that took place in 2020, and this was trying to modernize some of the language in it once again. Just changing that kind of laundry list of all these different types of media that could be related to computers to just non-paper physical media. So if you got like a thumb drive, same thing if you got a punch card for an old computer. They're just using it all as physical media related to information you might store. And then there's another update. So this is something that gets looked at regularly by the legislature the very next year to exempt geo-coordinates related to tracking game. So this was something that came about in 2021. So again, not a scary law. It's a good law that lets people get copies of the information that they're interested in. Frequently, these are procedural documents that people are looking for, whether they're fire reports, police reports, things that they need released to them. If you look at something like documents that the Department of Public Safety has compared to anywhere else in the city, our responses are easily 10 to 1, those documents compared to anything else that people are asking for. Some other very frequently requested throughout Michigan municipalities items are, salaries for everyone on the books here in the city is a very common one. And frequently you'll get FOIA'd for kind of the check register, where we're making payments out to, what vendors we're using, anything like that. And those are some of the big ones that you'll see regularly, annually, from, municipality to municipality to municipality. So the other component of this that I was asked to talk about today is the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Now this really has a few big points. One is defining what is and isn't a meeting, affirming the public rights that people have that are members of the audience, really talking about the documents that are generated for a meeting, and then talking a little bit about when you can exclude people from a meeting, and that's typically referred to as closed sessions. So the definition of a meeting under the Open Meetings Act is entirely different from what common parlance would think of as a meeting. So this is what many people think of when they think of as a meeting, right? People are here to visit, to observe what's happening, to maybe bring some things before the city council during public comment. You're all in a room here, physically next to each other. But there's a broader definition of what a meeting is and isn't in the Open Meetings Act. And this is something that I thank Councilmember Lowe for encouraging me to look at a little bit last week. You know, really, meetings can be a group text message. It could be a email that goes out. And that's where you can run into a few problems. So it's a real broad definition of what a meeting is or isn't. It's not necessarily something that you're planning to sit down at and vote at. So if you're having any kind of information gathering on something that you're later going to decide upon, so something like that master planning workshop that you had last week, the master plan is going to come before the city council eventually. Something like that under the Michigan Open Meetings Act is considered an open meeting. And you all did everything right. You had public comment. We had that notice. We, in fact, did have a member of the public come and give public comment. So really, it's not just times where you're going to vote on something that it's considered a open meeting or a meeting under the Michigan Open Meetings Act. There are some exemptions in here, so I don't know what all your favorite breakfast spots are in town, but if you all happen to show up there and it's just kind of chance, or you're just there to celebrate someone's birthday or anything like that, that's okay. Those social or chance gatherings, just try to refrain from talking about things that are actually within the scope of your duties on the city council, and then you won't run into any problems. So the public does have some good rights, so hopefully everyone in the audience here is aware of these. If not, take notes for tonight. So you can attend any public meeting without having to sign in or identify yourself. Now this does run into some problems at some municipalities, and these have been lawsuits that have gone through the courts, especially related to groups that have a lot of security when you're trying to get into the building. But you do not have to provide so much as your name when you're attending a meeting of the city council here. Now, if you want to address the city council, if you want to actually speak and give public comment, then the city council is within their rights to request your name, your address, whatever they have established as their standard procedure. So that's in line with what we do here. You can also limit public comment to a certain amount of time, and generally that's that section that the mayor reads when we're opening public comment. So the public is also allowed to record or film these meetings and broadcast them as well. So if anyone in the public or the audience wanted to set up their own Facebook Live or any other stream, they're within their rights to do that as well. One of the big things that you'll see happen at some municipalities are confusion over voting, especially when it's a board or commission trying to elect a chairperson. You can't have secret ballots at all. So it is possible to have a written ballot as long as you read how each member voted, but it can't be an anonymous or secret ballot when you're making a decision like that. And so really the idea behind this is anyone sitting here or anyone listening in should be able to know what's going on with the meeting. So, you know, you all do a really good job at this. You're not emailing each other. You're not texting each other during the meeting. So real easy things to get in a bad habit of doing, but you know better at this point. So one of the other parts of the Open Meetings Act, though, which is the more fun part of it, are the meeting documents that you have. So these are things that are largely taken care of by staff. so providing a notice for the meeting. And there are certain legal requirements on this. We do maintain a city webpage, so these are both posted physically inside the building, but also posted online. We also do people a favor of allowing to sign up for a public comment or a public notice list, and we'll just email them out to you as well. So if anyone listening out there is interested in joining that list, please contact the city clerk's office. We'll be more than happy to add you to that list and let you know about all the meetings we have. I will warn you, however, that we have around 200 meetings here a year, so you may get a little bit more in your email through the course of a year. And of course, the other big main meeting document that you're going to run into are meeting minutes. There's very little that you're actually required to keep in your meeting minutes, so it's who was there, who wasn't, what time the meeting started, what time the meeting ended, any roll call votes you have, and any other decisions made. So currently, for the city council minutes, we try to provide a synopsis of discussions, but if at any point you want a more detailed reflection of discussions, or you think that those synopses are too long, you can certainly make a motion to direct the city clerk on what you would prefer as a group. So that's just something to keep in mind, that those discussion points aren't legally required to be in the minutes. So if you don't like them, you can change them. And the other important part of the Open Meetings Act is certainly closed sessions. It's something that this group's familiar with. It's something that you've all done in your couple months on council here. You can include or exclude staff members as you see fit. Certainly outside folks as well that might be relevant to the discussion that you're having. These are kept in a separate set of minutes from the ones that are publicly viewable. So without a court order, those stay sealed for about a year, and then after that record retention period is up, they are destroyed at that point. So that's kind of a big, in a nutshell, version of the Open Meetings Act, the Freedom of Information Act. But just like when you're talking about the Freedom of Information Act, there's certainly changes that happen to the Open Meetings Act as well. So the two big changes for this year that are coming out of the Open Meetings Act so far are the sunset of the provisions that allowed virtual meetings last year. So that ended by the first of this year. But as of last week, the Attorney General issued an opinion that ADA accommodations are a required part of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. So if a member of a board or commission or an elected official is requesting an accommodation, even though you do have to have an in-person meeting, if their accommodation that's approved happens to be that they need to meet remotely, that is something that you have to consider through your ADA coordinator.
Kelly, I got a question on this one.
Yep.
We're developing local policy for that?
We are currently, yep. We hope to
And-
bring that before the council on the 21st.
Okay, good.
So the very next meeting you have. We're actually, I'm trying to get the equity team for the city to look at this on Wednesday, so.
Good.
We'll have someone, besides just me and Pat, looking at this policy, that can provide a different, point of view as well.
Okay, I think that's a very welcome change, yeah.
Great.
Kelly, just a quick question. From a records retention,
Mhm.
the electronic meetings that we've had via Zoom, do we have a requirement to keep them for the same amount of, period that we did minutes or anything else?
Yep, so the minutes from that are still a permanent retention. It's something that we're required to keep, for the same amount of time that you'd have.
What about but the video?
The video I'd
Of
have to
those?
check on, honestly. So I can look at that and get back to all of you. I don't know off the top of my head. There are a number of just guides that we look at when we're looking at getting rid of anything.
I'm just curious, just with the pandemic and all that, we went to almost all Zoom meetings for quite some time, whether or not we have any responsibility to keep those.
Yeah, that's certainly something to look at before we start to destroy any of them. Or delete them, I guess, is the hip kid term.
Okay, I think we've hit our 7:30 drop dead time, and I'm guessing that's Tom Forshee up top. Is that you, Tom? Can you hear us? Yes?
Yes, that's me.
Okay,
Yes.
with your indulgence, both of you, I'm going to close the special work session, which I hereby adjourn. And then I'm going to open our regular meeting, and Tom, if you'll stand by, we will continue the special work session when we've gone through some of the preliminary matters of our meeting. Can you hear us? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, the City of Grand Haven regular city council meeting of February 7th, 2022 is hereby called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Fritz,
Here.
Councilmember Lowe,
Here.
Councilmember Cummins,
Here?
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Here.
Mayor McNally.
Here.
You have a quorum, Your Honor.
Thank you. Normally, at this time, we do an invocation. We don't have a minister to deliver the invocation, for which I take personal responsibility. So I thought I'd do a poem, if that's okay with everybody. It's a poem by Robert Frost, and it goes like this. Boy, I just lost it. Hang on. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and snowy lake, the coldest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of icy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Robert Frost is my favorite. Would everyone please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ouch, got it again. All right, we're going to, I think we're going to do the boards and commission appointments, and we've got two new appointments to boards and commissions. Andrew Alt to the Planning Commission and Lisa Dora to the Historic Conservation District Commission. And I wonder if I could get a motion to confirm their nominations.
So move. And second it.
Moved by McLaughlin, seconded by Fritz. Any discussion? I'd just like to say that we are grateful for volunteers who come forward to serve their community, and I think these two will do so admirably, and I very much appreciate their joining us and their willingness to serve. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Lowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Cummins,
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Yes.
Councilmember Fritz,
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Motion to appoint the members carries, Your Honor.
So Kelly, we're going to swear them in now.
That would be great to do. Andrew Alt, are you here?
Yeah.
All right, can you join me up at the microphone, the mayor?
In the front there?
This is Kelly Beatty, and who's swearing in.
All right, so raise your right hand, Andrew, and repeat after me. I, Andrew Alt,
I, Andrew Alt,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the Planning Commission member
of Planning Commission member
in and for the City of Grand Haven,
in and for the City of Grand Haven,
County of Ottawa,
County of Ottawa,
and State of Michigan,
and State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities. Thank you. Thank you.
And I just want everyone to know he's going right to work.
Yeah. It'll be a long one.
I, Lisa Dora,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of Historic Conservation District Commission member
of Historic Conservation District member
in and for the city of Grand Haven,
in and for the city of Grand Haven,
County of Ottawa,
County of Ottawa,
and state of Michigan,
and state of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go back into special work session after the call to the audience. Is will that work? So we're at the point where we're going to look at approval of the consent and regular agendas. I'm gonna start with asking, are there any additions or corrections?
Yes, Your Honor, we would like to add an item to do the second reading of a plan development approval that you introduced at your last meeting. It was inadvertently omitted from the agenda tonight. At the time it was introduced, there were no questions or requests for any changes. The original introduction was properly noticed, and the meeting was properly held, so tonight would traditionally be the second reading of such an ordinance, and it would be consideration by City Council of a final resolution to approve an ordinance to amend the approved plan development for Grand Plaza located at 1021 Jackson Avenue, to redesign the plans to avoid state-regulated wetlands and to reduce the scope of development to one phase and one land use. So that was properly read, and the public hearing was held at your meeting last time. So this is linked to an agenda item at the Planning Commission for tomorrow night. So we were
So-
hoping to get the second reading tonight.
So right now I need a motion to add that item to the agenda. for
To
the
add
meeting.
that item to the agenda as old business, which will be item 13A, old business, right?
So moved.
Got a motion from Lowe, is there any support?
Second.
Second by McLaughlin. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Cummins?
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Yes.
Councilmember Fritz?
Yes.
Councilmember Lowe?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes.
All right, that item is added to your agenda.
And it's old business, tell me again?
At item A, so it's
A.
13A would be the designation for it.
Okay, thank you. So now I need a motion for approval of the consent and regular agendas. I got a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Motion by McLaughlin, any second?
Second.
Second by Cummins. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Yes.
Councilmember Fritz?
Yes.
Councilmember Lowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Cummins?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes.
Motion carries, Your Honor.
Okay. Call to the audience, one of two opportunities at this meeting. At this time, members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. Those not physically present who would like to call in may dial 616-935-3745 3285. If the phone continues to ring, please remain on the line until your turn, and we will take all callers tonight. Is there anyone in the audience that would care to address this council?
Hi, my name is Carolyn Taylor, and I live at 15177 Ferris Street, Grand Haven. And I've said hello to you all before, but I'm here again, and my topic is the same. Not all of you have met my son in person. In fact, I'm not sure if any of you have. I know some people here have, but this is my son, Casey Taylor. He's 18 years old now, and he has suffered from substance use disorder for a good 3.5 years, and is thankfully successfully in sober living now, has been for going on 6-7 months through everything. But my reason for reintroducing him and showing his picture and coming up here to see you guys again is really just to remind you that as we consider, as a city, as you consider the recreational marijuana use and what that might look like, please slow down. Slow down and really take a look at, you know, if we're going to do it, you know, to do it right. There are a lot of other municipalities and cities that have done this in other states and have been doing it for some time, specifically Colorado and California. And they've really developed, you know, some pretty good structure for what they're looking for. And since then as well, many people in the medical field and other, you know, psychiatry and such, also have found some best practices of how to do it right. And if we're going to bring that to our community to add recreational sales to the list of things, we really need to do it right. And all the research does show that once that recreational sales are in a community, the adolescent use goes up tremendously, even though we're not selling to anybody 21 or under 21. So that is my ask, and that's why I'm up here standing again tonight. I really appreciate the thought and everything that you are putting into it. I know that none of you are taking this lightly at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Tom?
My name is Tom Galetto. I live at 1323 Lake Avenue in Grand Haven. I've been a resident of Grand Haven for 38 years. And I'm proud to say I've only been stopped one time in the city of Grand Haven, and that was for walking on a road the other day. And I was told that I had to walk on the sidewalk. I complained to the officer, that's not a walkable sidewalk. He said they're doing the best they can. And I say, if we're not going to make people clear their walkways, if the city is going to do a crappy job of clearing walkways, we should not make people walk on crappy walkways, and we should be more open to people just being safe on the road. And that's my big complaint, I guess. I think I live in a wonderful city. I'm very happy with everything you guys do, but when it comes to sidewalks this winter, I do not expect to be stopped by a police officer again and be told that the sidewalks are good enough, when really only between 3rd Street and Harbor are those sidewalks considered in that good a shape, and that's costing us a ton of money to keep those sidewalks great. We are just not doing the job with several areas of our town, including Harbor Avenue, the boardwalk, and I guess I just ask your consideration for, I think we can do a better job. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Sheila McNally, 100 Franklin. I just want to call out 3 council people this evening for their lack of transparency. Councilman Lowe, Councilman Cummins, and Councilman McLaughlin. I didn't think I was going to speak tonight, but I can't sit back and watch you remove from an agenda something that is important as a legal discussion about recreational marijuana. Shame is cast on all of you.
Thank you, Sheila.
I first want to say that I'm with Tom on that. I think you definitely should be able to...
excuse me, could you please
Yeah,
state
no,
your
no, I
name
was
and
just saying
address?
that. My name is Oliver Champagne. I live in 12296 Lakeshore Drive, so out in the township, but I still have an issue to speak about that's personal to me. So, Mayor, recently you wrote in the Tribune that you wanted people to weigh in on an issue, so I'm here to do that as well. I first just want to say that I actually am a medical user of marijuana. 19 years old, but I have scoliosis and back pain, and one thing that does help me is the use of it, as does it help thousands of other people in Michigan and around the country, in Canada, in Mexico, and all over. It actually helps with a lot of things, from simple things to people dealing with anxiety to a swath of other things. I have been to New Standard multiple times and have been provided great service, fast, and the employees have just been great. It's a joyful place to go to, and it is something that actually generally helps me. And so the conversation that we're having here, for me, is a little frustrating. I think there's a lot of stigma that is held and not actual factual information a lot, sadly. So I guess I have a couple questions. I don't want you to answer them now, but just ponder them. So, Mayor, you also wrote it would ruin our character. And that one actually kind of bugs me, because does it ruin my character to use it? Or I guess, what are we ruining when it has a medical use and can really do something for you? And then you also argue that people would not support such sales in Grand Haven. And so my simple thing would say, then why not do a survey? If that's really what you think, which I would argue it's not true at all, then do a survey. And also, it's weird that I bet most of the people in this room today drink alcohol to some extent. I don't want to assume, but I bet there's a decent amount. And what's safer? I would wholeheartedly argue that marijuana is a safer drug. It has never, ever been connected to a single death from its use. And I can say that alcohol is not the same. And then there is the mention that it ruins lives. And substance abuse is a real issue. But you mentioned that you know personal people that have dealt with this. And I want to know if those people, was it legalized then when that happened? Because I bet in some experiences it wasn't actually even legalized yet. But still, people got access to it. What really does, and what you can really do if you really want marijuana to be protected and a safe thing, is you first legalize it. You can make it safe because now you can regulate a market, and then you can educate people about it. And that's the greatest thing we don't do, is we don't educate. We just try and hide it away. But I'm going to tell you right now, there's sales that you guys definitely don't know about happening in this city, and the reason you see sales increase when recreational is there is because people have finally now have a market that is legal to go to. And really the last thing I'd say is, this for me, doing this is like scary. I don't like talking in front of people like this, especially when I always feel like I'm gonna get judged and all that. But if you really want youth voice, the first thing I'd say is try. And I would tell you that a lot of youth people, if you really want them to stay in the city, one thing is to make them feel welcome. And for a lot of youth, they see marijuana a lot differently than you guys, I'd argue. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm Jack Demar. I live at 130 Crescent, around the corner from Harbor Drive. And I agree with Tom Galetto. There's got to be something we can do better with those sidewalks, especially on Harbor. I know their sign says that it will not be taken care of from November through April. But if you drive down Harbor in the morning, like my wife does, going to work about 6:30, 6:45, and she's got to wait for traffic to go by so she can go around people that are walking or running in the road. This city's a very vibrant city with a lot of physical activity. And when you shut down a main thoroughfare for walkers and runners, you're asking for a lawsuit. You're asking for somebody to get hit and hurt. I just would like you guys to consider doing something different with Harbor. You know, Harbor and Grand, the same thing. I mean, if the state park can clear off the parking lot or the parking spots across from Smolinski's house and across from Blue Water Inn and clear that off and make it look like it was just freshly plowed, I think we could do something as a city. You know, because Section 32 of the codes for the city says that if I'm a homeowner that has a sidewalk, and if I don't shovel that sidewalk, if it has 3 inches or more on it, I can be fined anywhere from $50 to $500. So if you're willing to fine an individual who is a property owner that has that sidewalk and driveway, keep your driveway clear too, as long as there's a thoroughfare, I think it's only right that we should look at that, all the sidewalks in the city a little closer and see what we can do with it. I'm all for it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jack.
Good evening, Mary Ann McNally. I live at 11 Howard Avenue, Grand Haven. I would just like to echo the comments earlier from Sheila about the lack of transparency from people who ran on the issue of being transparent to this community. I understand that Michigan has a recreational marijuana law that has created all kinds of litigation with other communities because it is very vague and it's very difficult for communities to try to regulate and limit the number of establishments that may sell marijuana without being sued. So the fact that you voted tonight to not even hear the legal comments and allow the public to hear that, I know you want a written opinion, I'm a lawyer myself, but it seems like you want to do this in closed session and not let the community understand what are the legal pitfalls and the risk of litigation involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
I think I know why I left, and I'm not going to take it personally.
I'm glad.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Steve Birch, 132 Dale Court. I'm out of my comfort zone right now. I think I'd be more comfortable watching Wheel of Fortune right about now. But there's a long-standing issue, and it has been highlighted already by Mr. Scoletto and DeMar. We're asking for the city's help to address a long-standing problem and a parochial issue to us, and as much as we live on Dale, we want to be able to walk Harbor Drive down to the lakefront, down to the pier, downtown. It's not just what we want, it's our expectation from the city as part of its services. And it's not just ours, it is highlighted in your master plan repeatedly. And so what I'd like for the city to basically stand in back of their master plan and say, we're gonna address that. We're gonna make this town, specifically a major thoroughfare, a collector sidewalk, a collector street, walkable. Not for merchants alone, not for tourists alone, but for neighbors and for the residents of your city. You know, just in looking at this, and again, this is the first time I've done anything like this, I was looking online at the agenda and I saw what Ms. Lowe had prepared, apparently a draft paper on the acronym SWAT. And I looked at it and it jumped out at me. What came out as one of the strengths was walkability. We call upon the city to back that up and to exercise that strength. Location has to be done with regard to the lakefront. That's one of the premier locations, premier talking points, selling points of Grand Haven. It is a marquee location. We ought to be able to access it year-round. Snow removal in the winter, sand removal in the summer on a regular basis. Not having to call into the C-Click Fix, which I hope all of you look at because it really keeps your finger on the pulse of what people see in their everyday life. Regrettably, what we have seen over the course of years, and I mean years, is when a member of the neighborhood would exercise C-Click Fix, they would get a nice but polite, we do not take care, clear snow in the winter time, or at this time we do not clear winter snow from Harbor Drive. One of the responses was, we currently do not remove snow from Harbor Drive, but as a reminder, we hold every private property owner to hold clearing their sidewalk in front of their house of snow. The irony was not lost on me, shouldn't be lost on you. What we ask is that the city basically help us make it walkable and stay away basically from another one of the, on the other side, on the flip side of things, on your flow chart of weaknesses, which I see other members of our community do, the neighbors, they're talking, and that is a resistance to change. What we conclude from the lack of attention to Harbor Drive is a resistance to change things that have gone on or not gone on for quite some time. The city is a progressive city. We're here for that. Maybe years ago, people weren't as active in the community, outdoor community. We know that it is just that. It's a city service that we really do rely on. So that's what we have to say, and we thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.
My name's Annika Birch, and I'm 132 Dale Court. Been in this neighborhood 10 years. And tonight, this is the talk of our neighborhood. Again, the sidewalk. What has been talked about tonight, it really, really matters to us. And it is a safety issue, and it is also an issue where I feel that we have many new members coming into the community. And they're putting a lot in their homes. They have a lot of expectation of not only safety, but the Harbor Drive and that area, and it needs to be clear for strollers. We have new parents in the neighborhood, strollers, runners, walkers, dog walkers. We have on our street a vision impaired resident that's been here decades, and she told us a story. She's here tonight. Told us a story that when she was walking with her service dog, she didn't know that she was on the street. We can't have this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. Katie Mobby, 129 Dale Court. This is my service dog, Rizzo. I'm here also to ask that the sidewalks be cleared from Grand downtown on Harbor Avenue. Thank you first for putting up the overhead traffic light. That really helped. That gets me out of my zone. Before I wasn't able to cross Grand Avenue safely. And now with that overhead traffic button, that really can help me get out. But once I get out and across, I can't go anywhere. And my first path to downtown is down Harbor Avenue. So it was me that was walking down the street and was stopped not by an officer, but thankfully by some gentleman who said, "Do you realize you're walking in the street?" Which I didn't know. So just for my own safety, for others, people with strollers, wheelchairs. I just ask that you consider clearing the path on the sidewalk from at least Grand Avenue downtown so that we can all access the stores and the downtown environment easily. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Katie.
Of course, the stupid thing goes sideways on me. Jay Whitelaw, 104 Poplar Ridge. I actually wasn't going to talk tonight, but after a few of the comments, I think that I'd like to put some things in perspective of what I've been thinking. I received an email earlier today, and I guess maybe over 100 people did, from a nice man, Brent. I don't remember his last name, but it seems that this gentleman is very good at getting people involved. Marijuana is something that is very important to him. Interesting thing, in his big email, he was talking about how our city is bickering. I don't understand why we're bickering about this. I think that you folks can handle this without special meetings, lots of people getting upset for good reasons. The people of Michigan have spoken about this. Totally agree that I don't look down at somebody who smokes marijuana. It's legal. But more importantly, how is pot sales, and this is what I wrote back, how is pot sales issue more important than, first, taxpayers bailing out the BLP's poor investments in snow melt? I've been hearing $100 million liability that the taxpayer is going to have, that we have to buy an asset that a company bought to run their company. That's a risk that they took.
Jay, can I just
I think I
stop you?
can I just continue?
Yeah, but $100 million isn't.
$1 million, I
There you go.
misspoke.
Okay.
I misspoke.
Okay.
Well,
Thank
whether
you.
it's 100...
I'm okay with you saying whatever you want to say, but not that.
Very good. Whether it's 100 million or 1 million, I don't think taxpayers should pay for BLP's inability to manage their business. Number two, taxpayers bailing out the BLP again on their consulting fee for their own cleanup liability. Why are the ratepayers not paying this, not the taxpayer? These are important things. I believe more importantly, determining how the BLP needs to reorganize their management team, as the current team does not have the skill set to buy power on the open market, now that the BLP does not have the Sims production plant supplying power to Grand Haven citizens. Things have changed, but the BLP doesn't seem to be changing at all, and we need to be sure the taxpayers not paying because of their mistakes or future not reorganizing. The Grand Haven taxpayers should stop subsidizing the BLP ratepayers. If you're so concerned, this went back to Brent, this issue about the number one priority that the citizens of Grand Haven may have, I suggest first, do a survey, Brent, with your people. Again, I don't believe this needs to be, there's a lot of emotions. I believe you're going to come to the right conclusion. And you have limited, and this was the last thing I wanted to say, is please be considerate of the council persons that are working hard, that should be focusing, and I believe you are focusing on the city's, I'm calling, crumbling finances. I, for one, are concerned about our bond rating and our finances. You have limited energy. Please continue to stay focused on what's important.
Thank you, Jay. Anyone else? Okay. Okay, I think we're going to move on, if we can, get Tom Forshee out and finish the session on Freedom of Information Act or Open Meetings Act. Tom, how are you? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good.
Thanks
thank
for
you,
having me.
And thank you for joining us. Could you just introduce yourself? So the
Sure.
audience
My name's
can-
Tom.
Go
Yes,
ahead.
my name's Tom Forshee. I'm from the law firm Dickinson Wright. I work with Ron Bulchey closely. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. It sounds like your city clerk is on top of his game with the OMA and FOIA things. I joined a little bit late due to some technical difficulties, but he did a really good job of going over a lot of the main points. So I'm happy to answer questions or go over anything that you might have additional comments on.
I've got one question that's about decision-making outside the city council chamber in a public meeting. Can you just kind of run us through that? If we have communication among council members in which they form an opinion on an action, but it's not done in an open meeting, is that a permissible practice?
So one of the things that you should be really careful of, and it's partly because of the electronic age, but you want to avoid doing kind of this round robin kind of decision making where outside the council chambers or outside of a noticed meeting, of an open meeting, where you have discussions via email or texts, or I've just seen a number of times in other places where you kind of forget and you send an email and then hit reply all, and then you reply to that and then someone else hits reply all. And really what you're doing there is creating a meeting of a quorum subject to the Open Meetings Act, and that's not been noticed. So you're essentially going into closed session without a valid reason to do so. And it can be very easy to do without any kind of malicious intent. It can just happen. And so I'm just always very cautious. And that's one of the things I kind of hit on when I do a presentation from scratch, is just to be careful with those outside the meeting kind of round robin communications. Is that what you were referring to?
Yes, Tom, thank you. I had one other question, which is, what are the remedies? This was something that I thought was very interesting when I was at mayor school. They sent me right to mayor school immediately upon election, and I stood up we had a presentation on Open Meetings Act, and I stood up and said, all right, I get what we're not supposed to do, even though that's sometimes hard, but what are the remedies if we do it by mistake?
So if it happens by mistake, you can reenact to the best of your ability in an open session what happened. You can come to an open session and say, there was a chain of emails, and so we want to have whatever that discussion was, we want to have it again here in an open session. So there are penalties for violations of the OMA. It's not acted on very frequently because it really takes an intentional violation of the OMA. That's the language in the statute. But someone could potentially be found guilty of a misdemeanor if they intentionally violated the OMA, and with some damages there. And really what you're trying to avoid is having anything you do thereafter. If you have deliberated outside of an open meeting, someone can go to court and say, that wasn't a valid action. Now, another thing that can happen is, and there's a time limit, usually it's 60 days. There are few decisions that you make regarding bonds and bids and contracts that people only have 30 days to go to court on that. And then again, you can go back to the reenactment. So if it did happen without admitting any kind of wrongdoing, you can reenact the decision. Of course, that's really not where you want to be. You want to be, doing everything in an open session, with proper notice, and then you don't have to worry about these type of things. And going into closed session, I wasn't sure if the clerk went into closed session yet, and if he's going to speak some more, I don't want to steal his thunder, but there are only a limited number of reasons to go into closed session. So you just want to be very careful going into closed session. One of them is to hear a written legal opinion from your attorney. Another is to talk about pending litigation. And there are a couple other ones. But you really want to, confer with your attorney when you go into closed session. But other than those, narrow exceptions, if another statute says you can go into closed session for a certain reason, then you can point to that. But other than those very narrow circumstances, everything else, when you get a quorum together, you want to have provided notice and deliberated in the public and allowed a public hearing and allow people access, just what the city clerk was talking about. They don't have to give their name unless they speak. There can be rules about them giving their name, but and they can record. So generally open access unless it falls into one of the exceptions for a closed session.
Thank you, Tom. Anybody got any other questions?
Oh, I do. Thanks, Tom. That's really helpful. So, and it's wonderful. We have a mayor that has a law degree and also went to training for this. So that's really terrific. Unfortunately, I'm a new member. I don't have that background. But so I got sort of a crash course a little bit as we're going along. So I may be sort of the person that's a little confused by some of this as it relates to email. Specifically, where I'm probably guilty or got into a little trouble recently. So I'm gonna confess just to sort of get some guidance from you, Tom. What does one do when there is a question, a question about agenda and a legal action, an action taken by a party that is legally correct but then violates potentially some other rule of law, or I don't know how I can say this. We had some legal questions about whether or not something was done appropriately, and there was an exchange about whether or not, and I did not know that the city attorney nor the city manager, nobody could stop, something from happening. So I guess, what I'm hearing from you is we just have to, we got to do everything in a public forum. So even if we see something like that, we have to step back and we have to stop it in this kind of a public forum. There is no other, to avoid a violation of the Open Meetings Act, correct?
So I just want to distinguish, you can ask your attorney for legal advice as an individual, as a member of the board, and you're not meeting as a quorum in that framework. You're just asking an opinion of legal counsel, which is privileged, and you're not deliberating towards a decision, and there's no quorum of members deliberating towards anything. Where you might get into trouble is if you, if everybody's copied on an email and you start discussing amongst yourselves a pathway to do some certain action. I can send you all legal advice as a group, but then you shouldn't, discuss amongst yourselves about which way you take that, which way you're going to go, what your direction is, how that informs your policy decision thereafter. You're just receiving legal advice. And, you know, that's how you can always, you know, send questions to Ron or I. And if you do so, you know, just avoid having that round robin conversation about the consequences of it amongst yourselves. So then you're not deliberating towards a decision that's outside the public.
Right, right. So we can all receive that information, but there just should be no other, if we had questions for you, for example, for the attorney, it's okay for the attorney to send all that, understand what questions we're having and what the feedback from the attorney is, but we should have no other discussion or deliberation via email or, is that right? I don't know if I'm saying the
Yes,
right words.
that's right. That's well stated, yes.
Thank you.
Anything else? Tom, I really appreciate you standing by. I'm sorry if we held you up, and thank you very much for your advice. It's nice meeting you.
Okay, anytime. I'm happy to do it.
All right, we're moving on to the consent agenda. And I think I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is that true?
So move. One second.
Motion by McLaughlin, second by Fritz. Any discussion?
He's gonna read it first, or?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mike.
He thought he was
Kelly?
off the hook.
No, it's not that easy. Would the clerk please read the consent agenda into the record?
Absolutely, Your Honor. You have 6 items on the consent agenda tonight. The first item is to approve the City Council meeting minutes for the special strategic planning session of January 10th, the regular meeting minutes and closed session minutes of January 18th, and the joint special meeting of the Council and BLP of January 20th, 2022. The second item is to approve the bills memo in the amount of $821,634.58. The third item is to proclaim June to be Scleroderma Awareness Month. The fourth item is to approve the proposal of $73,341.25 from KSB Dubrick of Comstock Park, Michigan to refurbish low service vertical turbine pump number 2 and pump can interior located in the Northwest Ottawa System low service pump station, and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary agreements. The next item is to approve an electrical inspection service agreement with Joel Haskell of Twin Lake, Michigan, and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary agreements. And the last item on your consent agenda is to approve a seasonal slip agreement for Terry Cordy, Grand Haven, Michigan, in the amount of $3,630 for slip 39 at the City of Grand Haven Municipal Marina, and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary agreements.
Okay. Any discussion now? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Fritz?
Yes.
Councilmember Lowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Cummins?
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes.
Consent agenda is approved, Your Honor. The next item on your agenda are presentations.
I think the first presentation is by the Loudoun District Library. Could the library staff join us?
Mayor and Council, thank you for having us tonight.
Thanks for coming, John.
You have the PowerPoint?
Nope. Good thing you brought it.
That would be a good Coast Guard trait because you're prepared. Semper Paratus.
My name is John Martin. I'm the director of Loudoun District Library. And we have a presentation that we think we can get through it in 90 minutes or less. And so since the first part of the meeting went by so fast, we've got lots of time here. I'm sure everybody remembers that this is our fiscal year that runs from July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2021. And that was a very interesting year. In large part, we go back in time, COVID interfered with our lives. And so we took a look and what could we do to pivot and still provide service. And so this is the annual report, and you'll see that there's a number of things that we initiated: curbside service, the take and makes, where staff would put together a thing to make at home, and then we would leave them out in the garage. People would stop by and pick them up. 4,000, well, let's just say almost 5,000 of those. We initiated these story walks, and we did a number around town. I think we've done a number, maybe 3 or 4 in Central Park, 1 or 2 along the waterfront, and several in all of the county parks. And if we go to the next one. Do I have a clicker?
Yeah.
Oh. It's gonna be dangerous. Let me make sure I know what I'm doing. Okay, I don't. I officially don't know what I'm doing. So, on the little chart on the bottom right shows you who comes to the library. And in addition to that, the digital materials, you don't need to actually physically visit the library. With your library card, you can check out all kinds of library materials. And so, we go to the next one. And then the dollars, money comes in, tax, in large part tax dollars, and then it's spent on services. And then the next one. And then, so these are some pictures of some of the things that we've done over the course of that year, the story walks in the county parks and the waterfront. Taking that story walk idea, we initiated a kind of a story walk in the cemetery, where in the past we had conducted in-person cemetery tours, which are extremely popular and would gather somewhere between 75 and 150 people. We decided to make the tour virtual, and we got a number of positive comments on that. In large part, and one of those was kind of an inadvertent comment that we didn't really plan on, but worked out quite well, is all of the signs were posted along the road. And so if you were in a car, you could drive from one to the other. And so the comment was that somebody's mother, who was not mobile, but could participate in this tour because all of the signs were large and close to the road, so she could read them. And then this is just an example of some of the take and makes. Take it home, make your own yarn pumpkin. At the beginning of the pandemic, in the summer of 2020, we invested dollars in a 24/7 locker. So this enables people to either call in or go online and order materials, and then we put it into the locker, and you show your library card under a little reader, and it pops the door open. And that's continues to be very popular. And I think is that the last one? Oh, yep, it is. Because now we're in Robinson Township now. We don't need to go there.
So who'd you bring with you?
I have a special guest. We have Burton Brooks. Burton has been on the library board since we were a district library and even prior to that. And Burton has also contributed with the community center, on the community center board.
I was for many years.
And then, believe it or not, in June this year, I'll be retiring, and Sarah Derdowski is going to step in and become your new library director. And Sarah has been working at the library for about 3 years as our assistant director for finance and human resources. Speech?
We've all been ready and waiting for it. Sarah, I just want to say congratulations on your job and welcome. And Burton, I wanted to thank you for your service. But Sarah, if you've got something to say, let's hear it.
Thank you for having us tonight. I'll introduce myself. My family and I moved to Grand Haven 6 years ago next week. And both my husband and I grew up across the state in Midland, so we're very familiar with Michigan, and we're so glad to be back here. And having lived around the country in many places, the library is one of the first places that we always went. I have 4 girls, 14-year-old twins that are 12, and then a 9-year-old. And so going to Storytime was always a favorite of ours as a family, and I'm thrilled to be succeeding John as the director, and I look forward to a good partnership to continue with the city. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd like also, Burton, I'm going to give you a second, but I'd like to say that you guys showed remarkable flexibility in adapting to the pandemic and continuing to serve the people, and I am very appreciative of that.
Thank you. I was just going to comment that in 1 month it will be 2 years of this COVID shutdown, and it's been especially a problem for public agencies, including the library. Our staff has done exceptionally well, and you've seen a lot of these outreach items. I also would like to comment that John, a local resident for a high school graduate from here, has done a great job for the last decade or so, and Sarah, his replacement, is a dynamite worker, and so we've been very fortunate with the management in our situation here. And I again thank the council who have appointed me to this position for many years. I feel that I've been able to do much for the community, and that we have an outstanding library here, and we appreciate all the support that we get from the city.
Thank you, Burton. Anybody got anything?
That's great, thank you. I just want to say thank you to, Burton, you've been there for next to forever. You're a long-standing member there, and also in the community also, so thank you so much. And Sarah, welcome aboard. It's nice to have someone step up in there. And John, you've done a fantastic job, and I'm sure it's going to be in good hands. I know it will. I know it'll be in good hands. You have a great board to work with, and our library is exceptional. So all of you guys together have done a fantastic job for us. So keep up the good work and stay committed.
Sarah?
No, thank you. Thank you so much. Great, terrific job.
Ryan?
No, I concur. I experienced the Wicked tour the first time, and I learned a lot of really neat, cool things out there. So you guys are thinking outside of the box. Obviously, the library, the facilities are fantastic. In fact, the mayor and I met there last month, and it was the first time I had a smaller meeting there. So we were able to quick rent a room, and that was kind of nice. So thank you for all your work.
That didn't sound quite right, I'm just going to say, but but thank you all for your service and for your exceptional service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next presentation, Amy, are you out there? Amy Bessinger, our finance director, who's going to give us a presentation on our 2022-2023 capital plan.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I want to say that apparently the library and I have the same PowerPoint and we like the same themes. So
same
I'm going to look at the little
colors or
same
same
backgrounds here. But tonight I have for you just the first draft of our capital plan as part of our budget process for the coming fiscal year 22-23. So I just wanted to touch base a little bit with the plan that we have presented for you this evening. and kind of give you a brief overview of the plan. I'm sure you'll have questions as you have time to review that through the process, but it's just a first draft glance at that. So the first page that's on the slide I have here is a summary page that's provided. So we have the original budget for 21-22 that was adopted in the fiscal year 21-22 budget. That's found on our website, the document is. And in that green column first next to it is what we propose for the amended budget for current fiscal year. This takes into account projects and actual costs that we've already incurred. So now we had an estimate in there, now we have actual costs. We took into consideration any funding that we received from outside sources, and also may include any projects that the departments felt they weren't able to finish this year that they've had to push to next fiscal year or future years. The second green column is the project cost less the outside funding. So if we anticipated outside funding or we did receive it for grants, any other sources, we noted that there as well. So this is just the summary page. And then those following two blue columns are for fiscal year 22-23. The next summary page that we have goes into more depth and more detail. So we actually have a 6-year capital plan where we want to project out for 6 years for project planning to help us assist in department budgets, as also help us with projecting for outside resources. Are we able to anticipate some grant funding in a couple years or other funding sources and projects that we can do? So this lays that out. It gives us the current amended requested budget for 21-22, next fiscal year, and then the following 6 years. You'll also see that we have the outside funding anticipated on this summary page for total project costs. The green on the end matches the green column on the left, less any outside funding. So we can see that under computer tech office and equipment, on the left-hand side is $53,806, but on the right-hand side, it may be a different number because we had some outside funding sources. So we take that into account there. The 6-year plan is kind of a department wish list as well. There's a lot that goes into that. So we want to put in there the needs and future costs and things of that sort that we anticipate. And then the next page that I have is just an example of what that outside funding might look like on each tab. So we have a different page for each of the capital plans, each of the departments and areas. And in this case, we have the Bicentennial Park. In this plan here, we have a project, the Riverview ADA sidewalk. And in the notes column, I have an MNRTF note. The acronyms are listed on the second summary page, so you can see those throughout the document. But in this case, it means the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund, and that the city anticipates applying for a Resource Trust Fund grant to assist us with that project. So we have $200,000 there listed in budget for 23-24, and then outside funding anticipated, we hope to receive $150,000. So we want to note that for you guys so that you can see what our hopes are for what we're trying to achieve. I just wanted to make that note. There are other acronyms throughout the document as you go. Like I said, there are acronyms on the first page. I try to list those out, and if I missed one, please let me know. And then this is just a couple notes. So this is a draft document. This is a work in process as we go through the budget. We may have changes that we need to make to this before you receive the final document in March. Or not the final, but the work session document in March. Apologize. But for instance, last week, the community center we found out may need a new hot water heater, so we'll need to add that to the plan. So those things will arise, and we'll adjust that until we give you the budget document. And then for the budget, as staff continues to work on departmental budgets and we review those, we compare this with the capital plan and say, are these projects feasible? Can we do it within the budget constraints that we have? Can we do it with outside funding anticipated? And we review that very closely throughout the process. And then just to note that it's a 6-year planning. It assists in long-term capital needs, helps us project out, it helps the departments project out as far as priorities and things of that sort, and helps us identify additional funding resources. And when we apply for those additional funding resources, we can say that we have a 6-year capital plan, and here's what it is, and here's how it fits into our schedule. And that's the presentation I have for you this evening.
Thank you, Amy. Anyone have questions or comments? Ryan?
It's the only thing good presentation. I think what would have helped me, or would help me maybe going forward a little bit, like you mentioned, projects change throughout the year, and you're evaluating your budget constantly, and kind of taking a look at where we're at and how we're doing, and realizing maybe we can't make this happen this year. It may be helpful to see kind of which projects were approved, aren't looking like they're going to make it, and then which, like more clearly, which ones got pushed or maybe being pushed next year. Because I know at least through the past couple budget cycles, may often bring something up, and you're like, well, it's already been pushed a couple times, and now we're pushing it to a 4th year, and so it kind of helps, maybe, us keep in mind too, well, how many times can we keep pushing that? It provides a little more clarity, but otherwise, thank you.
Thank you.
Karen?
No, it's a lot to digest, and first pass, I'm sure I will have some questions for you, Amy.
Absolutely. It is a large document. There's a lot of work and a lot of detail that goes into the budget itself. So wanting to give you this early so you had some time to review it. Next on the plan will be the fee schedule coming in the first session in March to give you a little head up with that, a little time with that document, and then the budget document. So hopefully we can help you guide that process a little bit.
Thank you, Amy. Kevin?
Is this kind of a wish list?
It definitely can be. I mean, there are things in there that, we would like to do, but finding room in the budget, is going to be a concern. So it can be definitely a wish list, but it can be also priority. We need a new roof on one of the buildings, and so how far out can we do that, and what can we do?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Mike?
I've been through this many times already, so, and I don't have a whole lot of questions on it right now. I just kind of scanned over it just a little bit. It looks good, and like Kevin was just alluding to, a wish list. I've seen it over the years where a lot of things don't make it because, restraints in finances or it's not necessarily needed at this time, so we do step over some of them. And then sometimes we come a little early with some things we need, like we needed some loaders here a while back. We budgeted them, took them out and moved them around. So this is good. So it's interesting. We'll see it when it gets back to us again. We sit around and start talking about it a little more, but I think the 6-year plan is good. I like it.
Amy, I don't have anything to say except thank you for what I know is a huge lift for you and your staff, and for doing a fine job with it.
Thank you very much.
I'll tell you, just one last thing I'll say. I'll tell you, our staff are fantastic when it finally gets to actually creating the budget, and we're saying, well, why, are you sure you really need this year? I'll tell you, they're really good at making their case, each and every one of them, because I guarantee I'm sure they're, at that staff level, duking it out, too. And I'm always impressed by the case that's made for the various items. So, and I know you guys are looking closely at everything. So,
thank you.
Okay, I think we're good. All right, and our final presentation is the 2020 Fluoridation Award by Michigan Department of Public Health to North Ottawa Water Treatment Plant. And Derek Gatos, our Public Works Director, is going to give us the story.
Good evening, Your Honor. Derek Gatos, Public Works Director. For the city, council members, well, when I first got this in the mail in December, I called up our filtration plant manager and said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe what we got in the mail. This is awesome. This is something that really sets us apart, and we should take notice." And I'll explain what this whole award is about. But the response from our filtration plant manager is, "Yeah, that's what we do. We get it every year." And I'm like, "Well, we need to celebrate." And I'll make this quick. But fluoridation process is actually it's got a history of about 200 years. If you actually look up and understand why we actually fluoridate. We started fluoridating our public water systems in this country in the mid-40s, 1940s, and it started with Grand Rapids. I found out that the city of Grand Haven's fluoridation in our plant, in our system, started in the 60s, predates any employees we may have, so a long, long time ago. But part of this award is saying that, hey, we take it and make it a precedence and a policy that we want a better health for our community. And so the plant continues to provide fluoride in the recommended dosage, and that's actually what this award is, that we take that step. And then here's the biggest thing that really I want to make sure you take out of this is the quality control that our filtration plant operators and managers have over our water system. You guys have recent tours of that, and I just want to congratulate them on that continued. It says 11 out of 12 months, but really we qualified out at 12 out of 12. And we're 1 out of 89 communities that got this award. There's almost 114 community water systems in the state. So this isn't something you just give out to everybody. And I just want to make sure that you understand the quality of water and the effort level and the appreciation that even the CDC and the state says gives us for that. But if you just asked them, they would have said, we do that, that's all we do. We do it every year, so. I don't know if Mr. Law has
Thank
anything
you,
else to add?
Eric,
or-
thank you for your fine work, and if you got anything to add, we'd be happy to hear it.
Good evening, Council. Eric Law, the water plant manager. I think it's more like 1,000 months in a row. I think we've mentioned that. But no, Derek is right. It's an expectation. It's really the foundation bedrock that our staff applies on a day in and day out basis, which is really about precision and consistency, and they really bring that game 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so, a big thanks to them. So I think Derek actually covered really fluoridation and its importance. We take what's already in the raw water source, which is coming from Lake Michigan, which has a fluoride content in it already, and we just go ahead and supplement that so that it brings it up to what the State Health Department, guided by the CDC, considers to be the minimum amount that's required to be really of a benefit to our community. So, like thousands of communities across the nation and around the world, Grand Haven had elected in, I think it was the 60s, to go ahead and add fluoride to their water treatment plant to help promote dental health. So thanks again. Thanks, Derek, for bringing it to our attention, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Eric. Does anybody have anything?
Yeah, go ahead.
Eric, I just wanted to, myself and the mayor and Karen took a tour with you, and I just wanted to say publicly how impressed I was with your operation and how clean it was, and how much I think everybody really cares in that place. I can't remember the gentleman's name that we met with in the control room, but it was you could tell he was so committed to what he does, and I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
I just also want to say the same thing. Our water system is by far superior to some of the other ones that are around, and the way we process our water coming in through the filtration from out in the lake itself before it comes into the lake bed, and that instead of having, if you go to other communities, they have big collectors out there and they suck the water in, and it has to be all totally different than what we do. We have a good start when it starts out with us, but we also have a fantastic crew up there. You guys do a very, very good job at making sure that the water is really good and everything is running very good. And also, our public works out in the streets out there taking care of everything else, so making sure that distribution is online. We by far are ahead of a lot of other places, so thank you and your crew for doing such a great job, and getting an award like this is really a great thing to happen to us, so thank you very much, and pass that on to everybody else out there.
I'll be sure to do that. Thank you.
Brian?
I concur. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Karen?
Thanks, Eric. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay,
You're now on to new business, Your
new
Honor.
business. I like new business.
And the first item of new business is consideration by City Council of a resolution to approve the professional service agreement with HCR Michigan, Inc. of Ann Arbor, Michigan for Harbor Island environmental consultation for tasks 1, 2, and 3 in the not-to-exceed amount of $81,809, and to direct staff to prepare and present an adequate budget amendment at the February 21st, 2022 council meeting, and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary agreements.
Derek, on this one too?
Yes, Your Honor. As you're aware, the draft agenda came out last Monday, and we're still putting these things together. And I got it late Wednesday night. Got it together on Thursday. So lots of effort goes into that executable document. We believe this is what the city needs, consulting with HDR on many levels regarding the tasks that we need. And this is just the beginning. We don't know what that final step is. Task 1, 2, and 3. Community engagement, review the documents, and prepare for the remediation portion of it. So if you have any questions, by all means, I'm here to answer those.
Any questions?
No, I'll just say, thank you for your quick work. I'm really glad to hear HDR's really trying to hit the ground running, and you guys are looking to onboard them very quickly. So this is a really quick turnaround. I appreciate the priority of, obviously, they're going to be reviewing all kinds of data and to get up to speed, but that they're also prioritizing, communication plan and how do we make sure that everything's available to the community as we go throughout this process of cleaning up Harbor Island. I really like the idea of the community advisory group that they're proposing. I think that's really spot on. And really the documents they laid out very clearly, what we're expecting. And I assume that we'll probably continue to get these kind of task type documents. That way we can kind of keep track of things as we go, so.
Yeah, absolutely. The task will be added to, we'll bring that back. You'll see the same agreement, the same Exhibit B, and they're just going to continue to add to Exhibit A the tasks that we believe are needed for you to consider funding.
Appreciate that. That's really helpful to us as the council, so thank you.
Karen?
I don't have anything.
Mike?
I'll make a motion
That's a good idea. I was gonna do that.
so we can discuss this.
Mike, do you have a motion for me?
No, I'd like to make a motion so we can discuss this.
Go ahead.
The-
You move
I
approval?
move, I make the first motion, and I need somebody to second this.
Second.
There you
Okay.
go. Now, we're supposed to do that before we discuss it.
Yes, we are. I got it, Mike. Thanks.
Just trying to help you out a little bit.
I appreciate it, but you're a little late.
I was gonna interrupt you, but then all of a sudden, I was gonna interrupt, but I got the clerk's attention, but
So we've got a motion to approve this resolution by Fritz and a second by McLaughlin. And I believe we've had most of our discussion. Anybody got any more discussion? Kevin?
I'm gonna bring up a sore subject, so, that people will probably not like, but how are we going to distinguish on what we have to pay and what the BLP has to pay?
Pat?
Well, that's a policy issue for you and the BLP board to have a good, honest, frank discussion about. Of course, I've been very clear that I believe in 2022, we would not be talking about this expense had the BLP not decided to build a power plant on top of our old dump.
Right.
They did that, and so now, some 50 years later, after we walked away from that area, we have the Department of Energy, or the Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, wanting to engage us to come up with ways to make it right, and we're gonna do that. And we're gonna do it with all dispatch, this $80-some thousand that you're gonna be asked to pay for this first phase. Part of your resolution tonight is to present an adequate budget amendment. So we need to find some money between now and your next meeting and present that to you, with probably some options. I know you guys like options. How can we pay for this? But I would submit to you that I would expect that the utility company that utilized that real estate for decades after we closed our dump ought to be held accountable for some of that expense. But that is a policy discussion for you and those board members to hold and come up with what you think is a fair assignment of those responsibilities. I don't think it's fair to say one side or the other, all the ratepayers or all the taxpayers ought to bear the full burden, but I think all the ratepayers and all the taxpayers would agree that it needs to get fixed. We don't want to get into our drinking water. So let's focus on that and not have a big, because spending a lot of time right now on the responsibility issue takes our eye off the ball of working with our partners at the state and federal level to hopefully come up with other funding resources. We can't afford what this is going to cost locally.
Right.
And we all agree on that. So there will be some consulting fees, there will be some match costs, but if we can spend our energies focusing on attracting resources,
Right.
private and public, we've had a lot of private interest, environmental groups wanting to help us get things taken care of. So, I don't have a good answer for you, Councilman McLaughlin, about who's going to pay for what and how we'll do our best to keep track of it. HDR will pay attention to these different silos, if you will, of coal ash or
Yeah.
dump cleanup or PFAS.
Yeah.
And the PFAS, it's going to be hard to find a smoking gun. Exactly where did that come from? Did it come from local Grand Haven industry? Did it come from industry outside of Grand Haven? And that's going to be quite a detective case. And we also have the insurance issue, so we'll want to try to.
Yeah.
And I think throughout this process, my direction from City Council would be to find other money to fund this cleanup. I hate calling it a cleanup. The environmentalists get anxious. Due care. To do the due care and keep it out of our drinking water. And to the greatest extent possible, if there's federal money coming down through the infrastructure bill or through CARES Act funding or through other sources, let's look at that ARPA money or find other places to come up with the funding we need to take care of a extremely audacious path that we're on right now. And we've got some preliminary meetings set up, and cracking that egg about who's going to pay for what will be a significant item. But first, let's see how much that's going to be. What's our
Right.
local share going to be? But certainly this $80,000, we'll come back to you with a recommendation of where we can access that capital so HDR can really get going on this thing.
Okay, thank you.
I think, Pat, you did a good job summarizing. I think it's going to be difficult to tell. I understand, the city manager's position is, we closed at the dump and wouldn't be dealing with it, but, and that is true, but that stuff would still be there. And the fact that we know about it now, and it isn't attributable to the BLP's operations as much as we know, we're gonna have to sort those issues out as well. So I think we try to do equity is what we will try to do as a council. And I think you're right with the BLP board in trying to serve the community as best we can. I got anything else on that? Thank you very much, Derek. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Lowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Cummins?
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Yes.
Councilmember Fritz?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes,
Motion carries, Your Honor.
thank you.
The next item on new business is consideration by the City Council of a resolution to approve updates to the City of Grand Haven FOIA procedures and guidelines and written public summary.
Could I have a motion to that effect?
So moved?
Any support?
Second.
Motion by Fritz, second by Cummins. Now, I know the city clerk would like to give us another presentation on the Freedom of Information Act, but I'm gonna suggest that, maybe we don't wanna go too deeply into that. I did have a couple questions, though. One is,
Absolutely.
Kelly, does our ordinance follow, is there like a model state ordinance?
Ours is very close to what many other municipalities have. I haven't seen a model one before. I'm
So
sure
like-
MML has one
Like
though.
somebody, yes, that's what I was asking. Does somebody like the Michigan Municipal League put out a model ordinance and are we following it? So the answer to the first is yes, but the second is
I am
aligned but not necessarily the same.
Correct.
Okay. Does that raise anything for anybody? Okay. Prisoner requests, I take it, are because they're not allowed under the law or they're not required?
Right, they're not permissible under the state statute.
Okay. I had a couple other, I think I had some, the other thing I had was, our ordinance provides for providing a website link, in lieu of providing documents. How do we deal with people that don't have virtual access?
If they're unable to access the website, they can request a physical copy.
Okay.
And that's something we're happy to provide.
Okay, that helps, thanks. Anybody got any other questions?
No, this is pretty cut and dry.
Okay, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Cummins?
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Yes.
Councilmember Fritz?
Yes.
Councilmember Lowe?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes,
Motion carries, Your Honor. The next item on your agenda for today, under new business, is consideration by City Council of an introductory resolution to amend Section 2-13 of the City of Grand Haven Code of Ordinances to allow City Council to hold regular or special meetings at alternative locations, provided the location is set in advance by City Council resolution, is posted on the city website and on social media, and is explained in all notices of any meeting proposed to be held at an alternate location.
can I get a motion to that effect
I'll move it for consideration.
for consideration?
I'll second it.
So motion by McLaughlin, second by Fritz. Discussion? Pat?
Well, this came of a desire to occasionally be able to have your meetings at other locations, to be able to go into the neighborhoods and churches and schools and possibly attract more one-on-one involvement with the city council in your decision-making process. And your ordinance specifically states that all meetings shall be held in the council chamber. And it's rather restrictive. We came up with a proposed ordinance, and it was questioned, like, is this right? Do we really want to do this? Or how will it be noticed? So we got with the city attorney and spent some more time on it. And he advised that we make sure that if you're going to have a meeting at another location, that it can only be done by city council in an open meeting by resolution in advance of that town hall meeting you might have at a church or a school or wherever. That you would have to post it on the city website and on social media, and explain in all notices that it's being held at an alternate location. So the sole and only purpose of some future city council, either yourselves or others, deciding to do that would be only in the interest of transparency and getting more access to local government. So if there was any concern that maybe a future council might get a little fast and loose with it and just decide, well, let's just get together down at the coffee shop and have a meeting and do it without properly noticing it, I think those concerns might be dispelled by making sure that it's only set in advance at an open meeting by a council resolution. It's well noticed and posted on website and social media, which I think that's interesting. If we have that in an ordinance, I promise you in a couple generations, people will look at that and probably there'll be something else. They'll need to add it, so whatever means necessary. And the only reason I propose this is in the past, city council has had those meetings, and we really didn't know we weren't supposed to, so we, came back to it and said, okay, we can only do special meetings at other locations. Well, if someday you decide, well, we've got a big regular meeting, there's a lot of interest in it, and it's about a project out by the airport, so let's have our meeting at the airport and set up that room and do it there, so we can have our regular meeting and you could do that by resolution, make sure everybody knew about it. Given our technology, we could still go on Facebook and live stream the whole thing. So I don't think it would ever be used to try to not provide public access. And our only reason would be to increase it. And I think if we did it, we would have big postings on the front door that says, meeting at airport tonight, so people would really know that it's being held somewhere else. But I have no great desire, this isn't something staff really wants to see happen. It's a lot more work to set those up. When we did the meeting in Central Park during COVID, that was a ton of work to get that thing set up. So we're not, beating the drum for this thing. I just thought it was a nice flexibility tool for this and future city councils to have if you should decide that that's in the public interest and you want to get out there and have a meeting elsewhere, maybe you ought to be able to do that. So the attorney agreed, if you pass this ordinance, you could do that. You don't have to, and it's up to a future city council, a majority vote, you might never do it, but if you wanted to, you would be able to do it if this ordinance was in place.
I'd kind of like to hear from Mike Fritz, because he's been to more of these meetings than anybody else. You got any views, Mike?
It makes it more legal for us when we go places and stuff like that. We've had meetings before that we did over the years, as Pat has said. We've done it, not knowing that was not what we're supposed to do. But it did work. People did show up. We actually did let them know ahead of time. We did post it on the doors and it's in that order. But the thing is, this makes it a little bit easier, a little more comfortable in case the situation does arise, that we can actually do this, and we can do it the way it's written. It's going to be done in advance, which is nice. Everybody will get a chance to know exactly where it is, and we're still going to be on Facebook. We're still going to be access for everybody to go there, and then we'll know ahead of time where we're going to be at. Sometimes the meetings we've been here, and I think, Ryan, we've had one when you were here, we had started here, and we had to go over to the community center, and go over there. It would have been a lot easier if we could just say, hey, everybody meet over at the community center, because that's where everybody was. They're waiting for council to come there. And so if we could just post it that way, we're going to meet it's going to have a large group. There's going to be a large group there to work. So I think this is going to be a good access for us. I really do. I think so.
Kevin?
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I really am.
Karen?
Yeah, originally, Pat, I was okay with it, and I like the provision that, provided the location is set in advance very clearly by council resolution, which would happen in an open meeting, by majority vote. So I would be comfortable with that. I did receive a number of emails from residents that were concerned about potential abuse, and so I don't know, I have some concerns about whether or not we're passing this. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Do we really have to pass it right now? Do we really have an urgent need to pass it right now? And whether or not we should just park this for a while. So, and that's, again, more, and I felt it, those residents who emailed me felt there was still a little transparency issue, and just in terms of being able to catch that they, move the meeting and, know. So anyway, I'm just going to put that out there, that initially I didn't see a problem with it like anyone else, but given some of their concerns, it just made me step back. Why are we doing this now? What's the compelling reason to do it now? And perhaps maybe we, rather than pass it, we should sit on it for a little bit and take it up at a later date, if there is no compelling reason to do it right now.
Ryan, got anything? Pat raised his hand.
Yeah, I was just going to quickly respond. The only compelling reason I'd say, I feel there's a crisis in getting the attention of our public. It's very hard to do unless there's a big, hot issue, and then only those people who are interested in that one hot issue tend to show up. So finding ways to be more relevant to the public, I think is a priority now more than ever. And I think it's gradually sort of, we used to have 3 people sitting right over there that were 2 newspapers and a radio station sat over there, and we really had very great scrutiny, and that seems to be waning. Times have changed, and just a way you can pop a little bit of life into the process and mix it up a little and give people something a little different to go and see in their own neighborhood that they might walk down the street and connect directly with their city council, I thought might be a way to jazz it up a little. I mean, I can't imagine the suspicion someone would have, because we've been here for 80 years, right in this room, and you got 11,000 people, and it's not very well attended unless there's a very critical issue. So any device that I can present to you to say this will make things a little bit more active, perhaps. Maybe not. Maybe there is a good call for that, but I'm
Well, just responding back, some of the claim, they know this is reliable. They know where to find us. They know, exactly. Maybe it was just a comfort level.
Mm-hmm.
And in changing places to engage I still am, I don't know, I guess I'm still not exactly seeing that. This is sort of the environment that is set up to make it with cameras, with microphones, to make it everyone able to hear, or people able to participate or view on Facebook. And then, I don't know, these are just some of the feedback I have. Like I said, I didn't have any objections initially, but it just gave me pause, because I didn't see immediately the business case to act right now of all the things that we have to do. So I appreciate the creativity about the engagement. I'm just saying maybe it's not landing in the right way, or maybe we need to go out and ask the public what they, is that a better way? Would they like to see that? I was surprised I even got any emails on this, to be honest with you.
Well, it worked then.
Exactly right. Ryan, have you got anything?
Yeah, I would say, I was kind of the person last time that was a little leery, that was a little bit deductive with our charter saying it had to be, by ordinance that we're setting locations. So I'm glad to hear that Ron has at least taken kind of a look at this, and my understanding is he wrote the language himself, so I assume that he's at least comfortable with it and feels like we're on good, solid legal ground. I guess I think, I've been in this room, in both the planning commission and as a council member when it's been packed, and then the hallway's filled with people, and then the people out the hallway can't always hear well, or maybe they're talking out there and interrupting people in here, and it gets a little awkward, and sometimes bigger spaces, like our community center especially has helped with that. And then I think about, the COVID times that we're in and how sometimes we want maybe people to be a little more spread out, and have some of those opportunities to do that. And so, if this gives us the opportunity to at least evaluate that on a case-by-case basis, to make those decisions and have those decisions be on maybe more solid legal ground than maybe the errors of our past, then,
Absolutely.
then, and Ron's good with it, then I'm good with a first reading approval, and then we can kind of consider some more thought over the next couple of weeks towards the second reading.
I had some of the similar concerns, and what I concluded in my own mind is that actually we got an exceptional critique from, I believe, a former city clerk whose name I forgot to write down, but it was Nancy. Is it Nancy?
Nancy Collins.
Nancy
yeah.
Collins.
Nancy Collins, and she wrote an exceptional critique, and I read what she said and went, ooh, ooh. So I think that what I might propose as an alternative, and because I agree with Ryan also, these were the two things. I believe that you can have a plumbing casualty in an old building, and we may not be able to meet here, and I believe that, especially given COVID, but also believe in when there is a hot issue, I would like the alternative to meet at an alternate location. But I think maybe what I would recommend for your consideration is, instead of saying we can go anywhere, we designate one alternate location and we designate the community center. And then they're very close together geographically, so if we need a bigger space to spread out in for either crowd size or COVID restrictions, it's designated. And if someone came here expecting the meeting, they would be able to get rather quickly over to the city or the community center. That's my 2 cents. I'm not hard over on any of it, but that's probably what I think might work the best. I think that's the most common place that I've seen city council meet in an alternate location. So, and it seems like it can be set up for that. Mike, does that raise something for you?
Yeah, as you're talking here, I just kind of like brought to my attention, if you look into this, is that it's not going to be our city manager making the decision. It's going to be city council. No matter who's going to be sitting here is going to make a decision on where it's going to be at. And we're the ones that have to be accountable to our constituents, and be that way. We're not just going to have it anytime we want to have it at a different place. It's going to have to be by the 5 of us. It's going to have to be a majority. It's going to do is say, yes, I think that's a good idea of going there, or no, we're just going to have it here, or whatever. I don't know if I wanted to have it just in one location, because the simple fact is we did do it in Central Park because it was actually, we could do it outside, and it, like Pat says, it was definitely a lot of work for them. But I actually got people out there. You remember that, Ryan? They got people out there, and we got to be spaced out, especially with COVID and stuff on that. Something that you'd never know what's going to happen or wherever. So just to designate just this area and one other area, I don't think it's going to be the thing. More than likely, we'll end up at the community center.
But you wouldn't limit it.
I wouldn't limit it right now. But the thing is, I would just stick with what like the proposal is here, just so that we have that option. But most time, I'm going to tell you right now, we've done it, we moved over to the community center more times than once. Over the 18 years I've been here, we've been there a few times.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you have.
But we also held neighborhood meetings and stuff like that where all council met, and was not the right way to do things. With this here, it makes it a bit more easier for us to get out there. So if the council decides.
That raise anything for anyone else? Ready to go? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Yes.
Councilmember Fritz?
Yes.
Councilmember Lowe?
No.
Councilmember Cummins?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes.
Your introductory resolution was approved. The next item on your agenda was added during the approval of the agenda by unanimous vote, which is the consideration by City Council of a final resolution to approve an ordinance to amend the approved plan development for Grand Plaza located at 1021 Jackson Avenue, parcel 70-03-21-119-021, to redesign the plans to avoid state-regulated wetlands and to reduce the scope of development to one phase and one land use. Medical Marijuana Provisioning Center.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Motion by McLaughlin, second by Cummins. Discussion?
There was no changes whatsoever from the last reading, right? Just so people at home can understand, there was no changes in any, on that order. Okay.
I'm gonna raise one small issue, and I actually raised it with Jennifer, after the fact. I had it written down the last time around, and I forgot to raise it last time, and it was the dumpster plan. Their dumpster plan is to have like blue rolling cans that they're gonna put out on Jackson, and I don't know, but I've never seen any business have blue rolling cans that they put out at the street, at the curb. So, pardon?
You're right.
Yeah, and I kinda looked at that and went, that's a funky thing to put in a business, site plan or whatever, and so I wonder, I get that they're considering it tomorrow, is that right, Pat?
Correct.
All right, I am,
For some reason, because when I was at the planning commission, there was some reason that they.
that was what they
Yeah,
picked?
for some reason,
Yeah.
Mayor, I just don't recall exactly what it was, but that was brought up.
Okay,
And I think
and there was a reason and it's legit?
I think it's because they had such minimal amount of,
They probably, I think they
Yeah.
have regulated waste in
Yeah.
these marijuana dispensaries, and so they have, I think they have different ways to dispose of it that isn't
Yeah.
waste.
and I don't think they,
Okay.
because if you've ever seen what the ordinance says about enclosures for a dumpster, it can be pretty big and
But
pretty
I
expensive.
I mean, I know we're getting in the weeds here, but, no pun intended, but I don't really see a truck, I mean, does a truck even come down Jackson like that?
Not picking them up right on the curb, that would be a concern because it's a busy
No.
road and
That's
we
what
wouldn't
I
want
would
to see
think.
that happen.
That's
Never
kinda what
seen
I
that.
thought, so.
Yeah, so we'll check the PD and make sure the site plan doesn't permit nonsense garbage pickup. That's a good point. We'll have to check that out because they need to have a dumpster on site.
Oh, I have to agree.
Okay.
You don't want that on that.
So, do we approve it with that as a contingency? Are we allowed to do that because we're now changing it? What,
They can change it.
they can change it?
No, we can.
We can?
We can add it to it as a contingency to it. That's the second reading.
I don't know if we have any ability to approve the site plan, but we,
In fairness, I asked Jennifer after the last meeting, I said, Jennifer, that was an odd thing, and she nodded and went, and she took it, but I didn't get any feedback later, so.
Okay, no
Right.
feedback.
Well, you know, the reason we have an introductory reading and a final reading
Yep.
is so that if something comes up, so there's no reason you couldn't have a friendly amendment to say, provided refuse collection methods are, you know, properly vetted, or we can get the wording exactly right, if that's what you want to do, to suggest that we don't want those cans rolled out onto Jackson and
That's
sitting
what I
there out on Jackson, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
So provided refuse collection be conducted off-street.
Yes, because that street is way too busy.
Right.
I mean, you listen to Eric in the morning sometimes. Or at night, or during the day.
So we can add a condition number 8 in the ordinance that refuse collection be conducted off-street. So then they'll have to either have a dumpster pad or a spot off-street where the,
Where the
Or they
truck
can
will
come in off
Yep.
the road. Sure.
That sounds fine to me.
Good point.
Thank you, Mayor.
yeah, I'm glad we got into the weed.
I know, believe it or not, I'm into trash management.
Trash man.
Okay,
That's true. So do we have to take a vote on the amendment, or can we
Yeah, I
just
think you
go?
would want to vote on the amendment and then vote on the ordinance, second reading. Is that right?
I'll make a motion for that amendment.
motion for, got a motion from Fritz, any support?
Second.
Second by McLaughlin. Do we need any further discussion?
This is for the amendment.
Clerk, please call the roll for the amendment.
Roll for the amendment would be Councilmember Fritz,
Yes?
Councilmember Lowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Cummins,
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Your amendment carries. Added to section 3, conditions, point 8, provide refuse collection be provided off-street.
Be conducted off-street?
Yes, conducted off-street.
Is that all right? Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Okay. And now we vote on the larger issue?
Yes.
As amended?
As amended.
As amended.
Yeah. I got a motion to that effect?
So moved?
Second?
The motion was already,
It's already been,
Oh, it was
it's,
already-
it's already
Already
been.
on, okay.
All right.
You made the motion.
Never
and
mind.
Brian seconded.
Sorry, guys.
all right.
All right.
If you're ready for the roll call though, to approve that, I can do that.
Say it again. The roll call for?
To approve the, as
Yes,
amended.
That's
yeah.
what I'm ready for, Kelly.
All right. Councilmember Lowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Cummins,
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Yes.
Councilmember Fritz,
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Your ordinance update is approved as amended at this meeting. And be sure to get that to Jennifer and the Planning Commission tomorrow, so they have it for their meeting. The next item on your agenda is reports by City Council, Mayor.
All right, I'm gonna start down with Karen, if that's okay.
Sure. In the interest of transparency, I wanted to share the following with some of our residents as it relates to marijuana and some of the discussions that have taken place. There's a saying, control your own destiny or someone else will, attributed to Jack Welch, former chairman and CEO of GE. I've had some interesting conversations with other municipalities over the last several weeks that have been rather enlightening. And as I began to pull together my thoughts to share with you this evening, that quote came to mind. Control your own destiny or someone else will. After having some of those conversations, I came across where I was referred to some of the Citizens Research Council of Michigan, crcmich.org, for those of you that, for some interesting information. One of the things that the Citizens Research Council has noted is an increase in a direct democracy mechanism through which adult use marijuana establishments can operate here in Michigan. What has essentially happened is what essentially happened through the legalized use of marijuana in 2018 is that there can be ordinance petitions on either side of this issue. Control your own destiny or someone else will. It occurred to me that Grand Haven has two options. We can be conservative and guarded in our approach to adult use sales by asking the Planning Commission to put reasonable land use regulations and buffer zones in place to make adult use sales acceptable in this community and regulated in this community. Or we can forbid it. We can take no action. This doesn't put an end to the matter. Rather, it provides an opening to allow marijuana advocates to draft an ordinance petition to registered voters of the city. There are only two potential outcomes to that scenario. One, the majority of voters who, by the way, voted in 2018 to approve Proposition 1, the minority who voted to not approve decided, I'm going to start right over here. The majority who approved decide they don't want adult use sales of any kind, but that would be a little bit illogical and reverse, and it's possible, but perhaps not probable. or the majority vote in favor of a new ordinance that's developed by marijuana advocates and residents, which would promote more freedom and resulting in the city losing any and all municipal control. This is why that statement, control your own destiny, or someone else will. So as residents, I just urge you to look into this, do your own research, and think about this. Do we want to surrender control, or do we want to try to manage this process and come to something that's acceptable in our community? That's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to address, and I wasn't going to, but I thought maybe I should, in light of the fact that Sheila McNally and I'm sorry, Your Honor, your other sister, Marianne? Mary, yeah, McNally spoke earlier and talked about transparency. So I'd like to make 4 points on that. I'd like to help the residents understand what happened here today and why 3 members of this council chose to stop the public discussion. Why is it happening now? Well, last week, the mayor very legally exercised her authority per section 5.5B of the charter to call a special meeting. Without City Council's knowledge, she directed the City Council to prepare for an oral review of marijuana litigation, including providing the city attorney with some very specific direction to researching areas that support her personal point of view. It's important to note that the mayor independently and without City Council's knowledge insisted that there be no written opinion from the attorney on the subject. Secondly, improperly circumventing council, whether or not City Council holds any discussion with our attorney in either an open or a closed session. Closed session would be to discuss a legal opinion. It is a policy decision for City Council, not for the mayor alone to make. Simply put, the mayor used her authority per the charter to intentionally circumvent City Council with the full knowledge that this was a policy decision for City Council to consider, not her decision alone. But that's not all. Written legal opinions are confidential. By holding a public discussion with our city attorney on this matter, the city would waive any confidentiality and privilege with that. Inadvertently, and anything said inadvertently or carelessly by council members in that forum could be used against the city. As a result, and in my very humble opinion, the mayor's actions exposed the city to substantial risk unnecessarily. So how did we get to that point? Well, you may think that, as I did, that City Council or the city manager, the city attorney could just stop the mayor by telling her that she could not make this policy decision alone. Well, as you heard from the attorney in the Open Meetings Act, that's not the case, because she legally exercised her right to call the meeting. So we can't right the wrong of her making a decision that was only allowable by City Council, except in an open session such as this. So council members could only do 2 things legally under the Open Meetings Act. We could individually express our displeasure at her improper use of authority and hope that she would cancel the meeting, which she chose not to do. Or City Council can exercise our right to postpone any public discussion of adult use marijuana, direct the city attorney to prepare a written opinion, and then to reconvene later so that we could decide, as we were supposed to as a council, how to hold that public session. So, again, in my humble opinion, you may not be in agreement with that decision, Sheila or Marianne, but in my opinion, while the mayor's actions were legal, they weren't cautious, they weren't careful, and they weren't collaborative. They were straight up non-inclusive and, again, in my view, reckless. So the mayor, the mayor has chosen to do what she did. Tonight, it is not because council members don't want to have a public discussion on this matter. It's because we disagreed with the way in which she went about doing that, as she took away this council's right to make that policy decision. Thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, just a couple points on that. I think we're all trying to, work through a marijuana policy issue. There's a lot of things that we have to weigh out on these matters, and certainly would never want to not allow any of our council members, even on an individual basis, to obtain, get their legal questions answered. I respect that process, but how that information is given to the council is really up to our body to decide as a whole. And so we've received a lot of opinions from our city attorney on this matter the last few days, and he's advised us of different things to consider, and deciding whether or not to get this information in an open or closed session. When I say information, I'm talking about some maybe legal advice. And I would hope that folks would recognize the importance of counsel weighing out attorney-client privilege and why there may be risks involved in having a very open legal discussion with an attorney. We have to be very careful. In fact, anything that we were to say or our attorney were to say could later be used against us if somebody were to choose to litigate some kind of matter. And so I believe it's permissible under the Open Meetings Act. The mayor has latitude to kind of hear from council members and where they stand on certain things. I talked with the mayor a couple of times, and my motion tonight is exactly the conversation that I had with her. Exactly, was that I think it should be the council's decision to decide how we want to receive the information. And nobody's saying that we're not willing to have a more open discussion about, we understand there's litigation out there. That the mayor's mentioned that. Our city staff have been brought up to speed and mentioned that in a planning commission memo. It's a matter of taking the right steps to get the advice that we need and working through that. I trust that, our city attorney's office is going to make sure that we're giving good legal advice throughout this process so we can make the best decision possible. And so what I discussed with the mayor is that perhaps we have the opportunity for an open or closed session be a whole council decision, and that's what we've done tonight. We're going to get a legal opinion, and it's going to include the items that the mayor in an email to us indicated she wanted, which was looking at the evolving legal landscape. She only wanted us to look at the risks of permitting recreational marijuana, and instead I think it's prudent upon us to look at the proposed text amendment and recommendations of the Planning Commission. We'd want our attorney to kind of give us some advice on that, and we want our attorney to give us some advice on what are the risks of not permitting recreational marijuana. And so tonight in my motion I've included exactly what she's looking for, and exactly what I think that we need to make a prudent decision. So we're going to get a legal opinion on that in a written form, and then we can reconvene as a body and decide amongst ourselves if we need to have any discussion on a closed session basis with an attorney, if we want to release that opinion, if we want to have a public update on what our attorney or advice that they've given us. We can have all of those discussions down the road, but let's do it in the right steps. So nobody's not looking into what we need to look into. The last thing I'll say about marijuana tonight is, again, I'm going to take issue with the mayor's framing in the paper of this issue as being a community values issue. She mentioned, the types of tourists that come here would be different. Again, that's showing a kind of contempt for a certain kind of people that, quite frankly, already live in our community and choose to use a legal product. And there's already folks that do visit our community that also use that legal product as it is. So I think that's just really unfortunate that we wouldn't, or that we would try to label or look at certain people a certain kind of way because they choose to use a legal product. So, I encourage anybody with whatever your thoughts are on this. Planning Commission meets on this tomorrow, and we're going to continue to evaluate it. As Council Member Lowe indicated, there's risks to not doing this as well. So, if somebody goes and asks for this to be put on the ballot and that passes, we lose our regulatory authority as well, and that could be pretty concerning. So, want to really recognize our Public Safety Department for them, a couple recent cases that they've done an excellent job on in catching the offenders. The robbery of the T-Mobile store, they did a fantastic job of tracking down those offenders, and then the robbery suspect at Lake Michigan Credit Union. So fantastic job on their part to catch some violent folks who came to our community and committed some serious, or allegedly committed some serious crimes. And then the last piece I want to touch on is Chinook Pier. Thank you to our staff for putting together kind of that informational forum. I got some good, there was some good information that was put out, some good discussion for those that attended, but also it had some really good media coverage, and there's some good, interesting buzz, I think, around the community as folks are kind of weighing out the proposal that's out there. So MLive did an article that I thought maybe had the most open question of a headline, and it said, "Restaurant, shops, or open green space, ? Waterfront development in Grand Haven sparks debate." And so I posted that article in Grand Haven Informed. My post had over 80 comments with people giving their thoughts. And pretty overwhelmingly, and I will give this to the clerk to share with the council, these are public comments that were made, no hiding anything here. So there's no secrets here in these documents. But a lot of folks talking about how, let's do something. Some of these comments have 30 people liking, yes, do something down there, 40 comments. In fact, Dana Bonnie, who's a local fisherman, he took the same article that I posted and pasted it and then copied his comment that he had given to me, which was pretty significant about his experience down there since 1984, and the fact that let's breathe some life back into that area. This was just this afternoon. Nearly 400 people liked his post, and showed agreement with his view on the proposed plans and doing something down there at Chinook Pier, and then a number of other people you'll see quite clearly, and certainly there's some comments that folks certainly do feel. There's some that feel, hey, keep it green space, and I think there's some good comments and dialogue on there that I think is worth all of us seeing it. In fact, I encourage folks to email the council their comments because, not everybody's on social media.
Some are. And
some folks are kind of, they need to be on social media, which that's an individual choice. That's why I figured it'd be better maybe just to print them. So if anybody so chooses to read the comments and comments from our local community, that you can kind of see what folks are thinking. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Mike?
I can wait for Kevin.
Kevin?
Go ahead, just go ahead down the line.
Okay. I'm going to completely change the subject. There's been a lot of talk in the community about a sustainability plan, and I think that everybody here on City Council, I'm not speaking for anybody in City Council, but I think we all support moving ahead with a sustainability plan. We do have a lot on our plate. Some of it's tonight, but we budget, we got Harbor Island and so forth. What I really ask the community to do is just take a breath. you know, we've got some huge issues here. Let us get through those issues. We want to do the sustainability plan. It's going to be part of our strategic plan. It's something that we're all, you know, very much behind, and we want to get it done. But, you know, I've been getting a lot of emails, I don't know if anybody else has, about, you know, where are you at, what's happening. It's still on our list. It's something that we want to move forward, we want to get done. But you just got to give us some time. We've got some monstrous issues in front of us. And I just ask for the public's patience when it comes to this. You know, we're doing little steps. I'm not going to steal the city manager's talk about, but we're looking at composting. We're looking at a lot of different things in this community, at least to start the discussion. So just bear with us. You know, we're going to move this ahead, and but it's just going to take a little bit of time. Thank you.
Very good. I just want to echo what Ryan said about the public safety and the great job they've done. Public safety, we used to have a police department and a fire department, but now we have a public safety department, which I think is more efficient. It gets more things done, and actually, budget-wise, and that it makes it much more dependable on when it comes to budget for us. They are very good professionals. They do great at their job. They have improvement over the last, we've solved the murder here in town and everything else, and so they've been doing a fantastic job. Also, I want to say thank you to Winterfest for livening the town up. I mean, the town was definitely vibrant. It was, if you ever walk through there, I seen Kevin down there. We walked through there and that, and tons of people, and they were talking about expanding the volleyball because it got to be such a great interest. They had people coming from Chicago wanting to play volleyball in the wintertime in the snow. So it was pretty cool. I talked to Kevin on that, you know, and that was pretty neat. Kevin Gabaldi, you know, and that was good. But what really bothers me tonight is I have to agree with the mayor. We needed to get this out there when it comes to the marijuana thing, at least ask some questions and see what our options might be, because even if we move forward and opt into these things, we're going to lose a lot of oversight of it. And by having the public out there getting a chance to hear what the lawyer was going to tell us, and that would be much more appropriate than sitting behind our seats here and saying, no, we want a legal opinion first. The questions we were asking was nothing in that order. The questions I wanted to know was, you know, what would be our options, you know? What would we be losing? Can we overread this thing or whatever? I seen it happen down by my sister's house down in Battle Creek, and that they have 72 provisioning centers, and they're next door. They're all over the place down there. I don't know how they all make it, but you got to remember it's halfway between Chicago and Detroit, so it's really a ideal location for them with 94 there. But we just got to make sure. Can we regulate it or not? I mean, can we say how many we want? Those are the questions I want to know. I wanted to answer, and then by doing what we're doing now, we're not going to get any answers. The planning commission is not going to know. It's just hiding to it. And second thing I do is these emails I've been seeing, and some of these council members coercing together with emails is actually, if you listen tonight, is not legal. But you guys going out and doing things ahead of time, I don't care if you do 2 and then 1 and 2 other 2, whatever comes out, you're still setting policy between the two of you that is not right. And I'm still upset with it. I've been upset the last time, and I'm still upset today. I'm tired of this. That's it.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, well, I took my shots. Now I'm going to give a few. I want to share some concerns about the process by which the issue of recreational marijuana sales is being addressed. In our December 6th meeting, supposedly because of correspondence received from a local medicinal marijuana seller who claimed surprise and hardship that the medicinal marijuana market had dried up when other nearby communities began selling recreational marijuana, City Council chose by a 3-2 vote to send the question of recreational marijuana sales to the Planning Commission for their consideration. Both Councilmember Fritz and I expressed our personal opposition, but I was unprepared at the time to sufficiently argue the good legal and fiscal reasons for prohibiting recreational marijuana sales. At that December meeting, Councilmember McLaughlin directed that this member be fast-tracked through Planning Commission, to which I objected because I thought there were more important issues pending here. By happenstance, I had a personal matter before them, and so I attended the next day's Planning Commission meeting and listened to their discussion about implementing recreational marijuana sales. A small number seemed opposed, but at least one was excited, and the rest seemed kindly disposed toward recreational sales. Many of them had been on the Planning Commission 2 years earlier when they'd done a significant amount of work on the ordinance that brought us medicinal sales. Preliminarily at least, there seemed to be general agreement that the hard work on this ordinance had been done at that time. They liked the ordinance they'd crafted and that it would be relatively simple to extend it to recreational sales. On January 13th, I attended a DDA board meeting. At the meeting, the board was asked to vote on a related matter. Planning Commission had asked whether the DDA continued to support the zoning buffers that had been designed to protect much but not all of downtown from medicinal marijuana sales operations if and when the city authorized recreational marijuana sales. I want you to think about how narrow this question is. If you answer no, it sounds like you don't want any buffers at all. If you answer yes, it sounds like you support recreational marijuana sales. Meaning no disrespect to anyone, it was a ridiculous question of the type I have seen in other city planning processes that have led to absurd results. I asked the DDA board, why aren't you communicating your views on whether the DDA supports rec sales generally, and was told, well, no one asked us that question. The city manager was at the meeting, and bless him, he piped up and said, well, the chief executive of the city has just asked you, what do you think? They discussed and concluded they didn't have an opinion at that time, but would gather data from their membership. In my mind, the businesses represented by the DDA will bear the brunt of any effects, good or bad, of opening up recreational sales. We should certainly ask what they think about it. I went home and did some research related to something Councilmember Lowe had mentioned in the pro-marijuana PowerPoints she presented at council meetings. She said we just had to make sure we avoided the problems with litigation they'd had in Traverse City. And our city manager had forwarded us all an email from the city manager, I think it was the city manager in Port Huron, describing their problems implementing recreational sales and recommending anyone considering rec sales visit a city that was struggling with them. So I Googled Michigan marijuana litigation, and I learned a lot about problems small towns like ours and even the city of Detroit were having implementing rec sales. Among the other things I learned was that disappointed marijuana sellers were suing municipalities, that the criteria Grand Haven had used for the ordinance we drafted 2 years ago had already been challenged successfully in other jurisdictions, and that there were legal and fiscal reasons to be very careful in this arena. When I tried to raise this during the subsequent discussions at a city council meeting, Councilmember Lowe assured me we would simply have to avoid the pitfalls Traverse City encountered and we would be fine. I tried my colleagues' patience by attempting to put this issue to on a ballot for a vote with our citizenry. Turns out City Council doesn't have that legal authority, even if 3 members support it. I messed that one up, and I owed and delivered an apology, and I didn't earn any council goodwill. I then went to our city manager. I said, Planning Commission will need legal guidance before trying to sort out recreational marijuana sales, and that reliance on their old ordinance would set them up for failure. City manager worked with Jennifer Holland and the city attorney to develop direction to Planning Commission that would help them follow the law. Turns out our city attorney had a colleague, Tom Forshee, who is their expert on marijuana permitting issues. City council members saw the direction to Planning Commission and demanded to know why they weren't advised of it before it went out. My question to them would be, why would you ever send this matter to Planning Commission without first understanding the legal landscape? Tonight, I had unilaterally scheduled a brief by the same attorney at Dickinson Wright, Tom Forshee, and asked him to give us a primer on the current legal landscape surrounding marijuana sales permitting. It is my right as mayor under our charter to put an item on council agenda, and I thought it was important as we make decisions about a complex issue that we have a common understanding of the law. All of my personal research was based on newspaper articles. I look forward to getting more and better information from the attorney. I recommended to the city manager that he tell Jennifer Holland so that any interested planning commission members could receive the same information. Tom's brief was designed to be general in nature, delivered in open session, and pose no threat to the city or any member of council. I thought it would be timely and beneficial, and in fact, it would have been. It generated a cataclysmic reaction. All day Friday, I was subjected to emails by council member Karen Lowe that desperately sought to shut down this briefing. She threatened the city manager with a charge of deliberate insubordination if he didn't pull it off the agenda as she directed. She stated she had the support of the majority of council members in this direction, which is tantamount to admitting a violation of the Open Meetings Act. She tried to enlist support from the city attorney by insisting I had no right to put this item on the agenda, not true, that I was doing this in contravention of his advice, not true, and that I was exposing the city to liability, with which he generally did not agree. She told him I was unethical. She told me I had exceeded my authority by asking for a 20-minute legal update, then spent hours of city attorney time scheming to stop it. She insisted this discussion of the legal framework should be done only after a written legal opinion, which neither she nor any other council member who sent this issue to Planning Commission had seen fit to order in the first place, and only then behind closed doors. She called my actions not cautious, not careful, not the least bit collaborative, non-inclusive, and borderline reckless. I admit to being non-collaborative in this matter, and I probably was pig-headed as well. I found Councilmember Lowe's multiple diatribes unprofessional and offensive. I have great respect for the Planning Commission and absolutely will respect any recommendation they make if they are aided by staff in an honest attempt to look at this issue broadly and asked to decide whether we should bring recreational marijuana sales into our community. As the chief executive of this city, that is exactly what I'm now asking them to do. The city council resolution by which this was sent to them is broad and inclusive. I hope they use their roles as citizen planners and advisors to closely examine what's best for Grand Haven. This does not necessarily mean I will agree with Planning Commission. It means that if they are given the tools to fully understand the landscape in which they are making a decision and empowered to consider all options, I will respect that their recommendation is honest, well-reasoned, well-intentioned, and their best effort. That's all we can ask of anyone, and I'm extremely grateful for the volunteers who serve. The city manager have a report?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you very much. First off, we had been approached by an individual who is interested in doing bicycle rentals at City Beach. Ashley, did you want to present on it, or did you just? Yeah, would you like to, you want me to do it? I'm okay doing it. Okay.
Hi, Ashley. What you got?
Hi. So, as Pat said, we were approached by a gentleman who's interested in operating a bike rental program at City Beach. As of right now, he's interested in just one docking station. These are just regular bicycles, not electric. They would be rented through an app. The docking station is battery operated, so the facility needs would be minimal. Sorry, my glasses are foggy. I did note some concerns from staff in the report. Those were mainly centered around existing clutter at City Beach. It is becoming quite full in that area, as well as management or mismanagement of those bicycles. We do currently already have a individual who rents city property for scooter rentals, so there is also concern that this individual would be looking to grow his business and expand, looking for similar locations as the scooter docking stations.
which he did express an interest, if this year were to go well, that he would be interested in expanding. I believe that was all at this point. So we're just bringing this forward at this point to gauge your interest in using, in this type of use on public property.
And that, yeah, staff, public safety was not crazy about it just because the overall congestion, and adding to that, Public Works, concurring more or less that it was the potential for bicycles to be, left around town, and maybe compounding what we've already seen with the scooter business that does use, currently they use their own property. Last year, we're talking about Colin?
Yep.
Yeah. They've asked to use some public areas and have been given permission. They haven't quite fully mobilized all their scooters out in public areas. We do have a guy down at Chinook Pier that rents bicycles, Sudden Sport, and people can rent them there and ride them down to the beach and back. And the mayor had brought up, is it the best idea to rent bikes out at the beach where parking's at the greatest premium, so people will drive down there, park their car, and get on a bike and drive somewhere else. I'm not sure. So, but we're not allowed to say yes or no to these types of requests. We can just say, well, you can ask. So we'll present it. So we wanted to present it here and just see if there was any immediate reaction, or I guess, if I don't get encouraged by you, like, yeah, we think this is a great idea, we probably wouldn't be bringing it forward. You already have one vendor down at City Beach who occupies the space in the restroom, and also rents out stand-up paddle boards, those paddle boards and other things. So I don't know that it's something that would have a lot of favor, but I did not want to dismiss this out of hand without at least presenting it to City Council that you did have an individual inquire.
So are you looking for input or a motion?
Definitely not a motion.
Okay,
You won't get no motion.
No motion.
No,
All right,
no
is that
motion.
input? Mike? Kevin, go ahead.
Do you mind?
No.
City Beach, I just don't know where you'd put anything on City Beach. I'm just trying to figure that out. How many bikes does he want to do, I guess, is my question.
Right now,
You have to know my policy.
right now, he is just interested in one docking station, which he didn't exactly clarify at this point. I think this is a newer operation for him. I think it'd probably be somewhere between 8 to 15 bikes. Location would be a concern. The only possible location we were able to assess for Waveco down there has been claimed by him. These docking stations are not small.
Right.
So it would likely be on the outskirts of the building on the far side or the parking lot. And it would,
God, you don't,
There's not much.
no way in that parking lot.
There's really not a lot.
I already provided some input that it looked space constrained to me, and I wasn't particularly interested.
I think it's a
in
good
supporting
idea,
this.
I just don't know how you're gonna do it there.
and we did suggest alternative locations to him of lesser populated areas, different public parking lots, or underutilized areas where he could have the station. And he was solely interested in the City Beach location.
Well, the other question I had was, why would we support a business where a person drives to our beach parking, parks, and gets on a bike and rides away? That just ties up our beach parking. That seems
defeats the
backwards
purpose.
to me.
Yeah, I look at it a little differently. I think that, I think mobility options are good, and just because one person drove to the beach doesn't mean the rest of the people in the car have the ability to maybe get around and want to bike around town, and maybe that provides some extra traffic to our downtown that supports our businesses there. I hear you on the space constraints. I would want to make sure, obviously still it's public space that we have to maintain, and a lot of people would like to probably use our space to sell all kinds of products. And so I don't recall what the exact agreement is with Waveco. I know we charge for electric. I don't remember what the charge was for the public use of the space. But it probably shouldn't come at no cost, right? And so, I would trust you to come up with some recommendations on what maybe that would look like. But I kind of like the idea of increasing some mobility options, if the right space could be figured out, so.
I'd like to make a recommendation to him, if he's listening, is that, back in the day when I was younger, say, like when I was about 14 years old, I used to work at the concession stand at the state park. The state park would have a lot more area for them to have their bikes and that, and it would be open to more people, and plus better parking for everything there too. And it's just a good location. Then I myself personally, if I was doing that, I would attempt to go to the state instead of coming to the city and getting a spot at our city beach, which is a lot smaller. But if you go to the state park, if you can get in there, you have, you know, thousands of people there, and opportunity for them to move forward on it with their new pavilion they built there, and they remodeled and all that. It might be an opportunity for him to expand and do a lot better. Then come to us later if he wants different locations in the city. Then come back to us after he gets himself established there. It's just, if I had a business plan, that's how I would probably attempt to do it, knowing that the attraction of the state park and all the people there, and getting the mobility part of it, because a lot of people come to the beach and they go to the state park. I mean, our city park is so small and so limited when it comes to that having the opportunity to hop on a bike at the state park and go would be much, much greater. I can see where he could probably be a little bit more profitable and a little bit more, you know, reaching out. I'm not so hepped up on the city beach itself. Like I said, it is really small, and we already have a lot going on down there with that buildings and that, and to kind of pack it in there. And we also have a place in town that rents bikes too, so you got to think all the way around. And myself, I'm still sticking with the state park thing and going from there. That's what, if I was him, that's where I would attempt to talk to them once and see if I can go with that, because it'd be such a great location.
Yeah, Ashley, I agree with both Mike and, Councilmember Fritz and Councilmember Cummins. The beach, City Beach itself is not a really great location just from a space perspective. I don't know if there are alternative locations further up on Lake Avenue, closer to the cemetery, or there's something else that would still provide an ability to have access to some of these ways, because I do think it is a great way. There are people from a mobility perspective won't walk all the way to town from the beach, but they may rent a scooter or a bicycle. It's just the issue of where to put it. If we could put it at the state park, that would be ideal, absolutely ideal. A great location. Again, it still provides that as an option. So, but I agree with both of them that, wow, City Beach is not great. We don't really have this, the space down there.
So, you want more than that from us? I mean, I heard 3 no's, I believe. But, and I heard.
No, I agree. I think, I love the idea. I just don't know how you're gonna put it there, that's all.
I also would just say for the record that Harbor is really narrow, and you really can't use the sidewalk much. So, a bike rental out there, I really look forward to someday when we might be able to get some bike trail out there, but putting a bike vendor out there where people come in from outside the area and don't understand, they can either go straight up the hill or they can go through very congested, sometimes, not always, but sometimes very congested harbor traffic. So, food for thought. I vote thumbs down if that's if that's allowed.
Okay, we may talk to the proponent about talking to the state park. They've got that new pavilion, and
that's a great idea, Mike. Yeah.
That would be most opportunity for him. They would probably look up to it if he does it correctly,
Sure.
Talk with the senator, talk with the House of Representatives, and then going out there and saying, okay, get with the DNR together, and seeing if we can do something. That's my recommendation. I would do it.
It also makes sense in terms of the fact that they'd be, the state park also has people staying there, visitors that may or may not have their bikes with them, whereas
Absolutely.
our residents have their own bikes. And so it just seems like a good fit with the state park. I thought that was a great suggestion.
Yeah. In the day, we used to rent beach umbrellas out there.
That was quite a while back. Mike.
Yeah, I remember working there where the wind came up and opened them up and shot them through the thing. But anyways, we'll move on from there.
All right. Is that enough?
I can tell you stories.
oh yeah, yeah.
And you had one more for us, right?
Yes, ma'am. The EV charging stations idea, I was going to seek any, encouragement or not on going out. And what I thought I might do is if there was a positive review tonight, that I would work on a request for proposals and a list of proponents who might be interested in making a proposal, and a list very specifically, much better than what you saw tonight, showing locations, and bring that RFP back to you for approval before I release it. So you've got some time to think about it, look around town, talk to constituents, see what the thought process is. I'll check with the DDA and see if they have any feedback or input. I've already gotten some feedback that maybe we should have a few on the east side. And there's pros and cons, because the parking in the commercial areas on the east side is really, really tight. So to take a couple spots and convert them to EV only, might get a little more severe blowback than maybe down in the marina or somewhere down in that area. But I'll work out those. I'll flesh if there's. And so far, I've been feeling there is some support to follow up on this.
I'm going to say yes. I'm all for it. I just went to the car show, and if you look at our auto manufacturers, they're all going EV right now. And if you look around at all the communities, Spring Lake's getting two more over. They're getting two over there. And if you go to Tri-City out over there, they have a charging station also. Jim has one set up already. You can pull in there and charge in there in Spring Lake. So I think the way the cars are going today, you're going to have more people coming, and if you want to attract them, you'll need to have that. You'll need to have that accessibility for them. And to charge a car, now if you come into an electric car, as I was talking to them, is that if you come into town and you spend an hour, you go have a dinner or something like that, that's all you need to put in your car to get back to wherever you need to go. There's a way they're having them set up in the charging systems now. So, and there's also availability to get charging systems. So, different manufacturers that are willing to help us to do that. So, reach out to them.
Okay.
So I'm for it. Like I said, I went to the car show and I went and seen that Porsche Taycan, and I tell you, that's.
All right, Ryan?
Yeah, I've already expressed to Pat my full support. I do think there's maybe an opportunity. I'm not saying it has to be a ton, but at least I think the east side of town will probably have an interest too, and there's businesses over there that have customers that visit electric vehicles as well. So I understand the supply and demand of parking spaces, but as like Mike said, as more and more cars that come online that are electric, it's just going to eventually hopefully be a transition that becomes a little more seamless.
Aaron?
Likewise, I've already expressed my support too, Pat.
Great, okay.
As have I.
Thank you. That's all I had tonight, Your Honor.
Everybody's aligned on that. All right, second call to the audience.
Thumbs up.
At this time, members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. Those not physically present who would like to call may dial 616-935-3285. If it continues ringing, please remain on the line until your turn. We will take all callers.
Good evening, my name is Benny Edwards. I stay 405 Marlane, not in Grand Haven. I am the owner of BNS Bikes, the bike rental that we were talking about today. Regarding you guys' question, I do have some statements to be made. I did talk with Ashley, multiple accounts. I am open to moving the bikes in multiple places. It is not just sustained to the beach itself. We have 10 bikes. Each rack is planned for 2 bikes each rack, meaning they're not all connected, so they're not going to be as long or space contained as you guys thinking. I can also move them in different directions. I have control over the bikes and what time they can be used. Have information on the customer who used it, so I know who's the last person that used it also. Meaning, say if a patient, say if a customer doesn't return the bike, I have the information to call them and their first name to let them know, hey, is there a problem? Can I come pick up the bike and replace it back into the right area? State park is a great idea. I would look into that, but that was just my concerns out there. Also, the name is BNS Bikes, which stands for Believe and Succeed. I'm not only trying to do Grand Haven, I'm also trying to do Muskegon Beach. The purpose of this bike is to make multiple people happy. I will try to work with local businesses just to get around, to express inspirational quotes, just to make more people feel conscious of themselves or confident in who they are. That is the main purpose of our business. Also, with a percentage, we'll be going to helping people who are addicted to opioids, alcohol, things like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask a real quick question? Because I guess I didn't see it in the, what kind of bikes are they? I know they're not electric. Are they gears or?
Yep, gear paddle.
Gear paddle? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, he
Anything
was
else?
here. Been helpful.
At least I gave him a good.
Jay Whitelaw, 99 Poplar Ridge. Just wanted to again go back and emphasize the importance of what we're focusing on. Councilman McLaughlin, I think when you sheepishly said who's going to pay for this, I really would love to hear some of the passion that I heard on some of these other things about the marijuana. If I look back at the notes, Mayor McNally, you brought up when they were talking about the remediation funding a month ago, you brought up the issue of which items are funded through taxpayers versus ratepayers will be an upcoming issue, but stated that this is not yet the time to have those discussions. I think those discussions should have been happening a long time ago. The only suggestion I'd have, you've got another consultant. We're not the only ones that have been down this path. For you folks, you are, but there is some very strong consultants you're working with. Let them decide. Let's not be personal between who pays for this, because the BLP is going to want us, the taxpayers, to pay for everything, and it's going to get ugly. And please don't be sheepishly anymore. Right on, sir. That question was the best thing I heard tonight. The rest of this stuff, you guys have limited energy. Seriously? Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Carolyn.
Hi again, Carolyn Taylor, 15177 Ferris Street. Just a couple of quick things that came up throughout the meeting that I wanted to also comment on. And when Mayor McNally said that she was at that Grand Haven Main Street DDA board meeting, I too was there. I've been a board member of the Grand Haven Main Street DDA for about 7 years now. I'm also 13 years on the Grand Haven Township Planning Commission. So while I don't like being on this side of the speaking side, I'm pretty familiar with some of the things that go on. I did want to say that there is a really great scorecard methodology, and now I'm going back to the medical marijuana usage, provisioning, whatever, that California has put out. And they have some regulations, and I can forward this to everybody, but they kind of have a 6-category thing. There's the retailer requirements, taxes and prices, product limits, marketing, smoke-free air, and equity and conflicts of interest. So again, to go back to where, you know, a community who's been at this a while, and not just even other Michigan communities, but come on, you know, Colorado and California have been at it quite a while, and they've fine-tuned and have worked on backpedaling a few things as well. So I think that that's really important. It's funny that it was, people a lot of times go back to saying, well, the state of Michigan voters voted and they want the marijuana legalized. And while that may be, that is true, I mean, there's no disputing that, but what that looks like could be a little different from what they thought. And I, for one, would be someone who would say, gosh, back in 2018, I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I had no business knowing any of that. That became legal November of 2018, and it was January of 2019 that my son started to really experience some difficulties when we found out. We'd known he'd been actively doing things before that, but we didn't know until January of 2019. And it turns out that, you know, today's marijuana isn't the marijuana of Woodstock, right? It's significantly higher THC levels, and that does lead more quickly to addiction, and it leads more quickly to really damaging adolescents' brain channels. So again, I realize it's not marketed and sold to people, well, marketed, I need to rescind that, but it's not sold to people 21, under 21, but it does actually have some scientific links to additional suicide ideations and tendencies for teens of a certain age. And specifically, it's not that they overdose on getting high, just like with cigarette smoking, right? We don't say that you overdose by smoking cigarettes, but we know that it's really not a healthy thing and it can lead to a lot of deaths. There's a lot of research on that with marijuana as well. And kids do have significant problems with psychosis that has been brought on by that high usage of THC for a few years. It develops those patterns in the brain. Again, things that I wish I didn't know, but I can't unknow it. And we need to be really careful.
Thank you very much, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? I think we're adjourned.